Chapter 737. A few days later, the news that the Tongtian Dragon King of the Rhone Kingdom's 2 saints went all the way to Donghai spread. It was said that the Rhone Kingdom's army was in a stalemate in the capital of Donghai Kingdom, but the Tongtian Dragon King, whose real name was Lu Gongzan, did not show up. After that, Zhang Pulu, the general of the Rhone Kingdom's southern punitive army, returned to his tent and was furious. But his soldiers felt that the general was using his anger to cover up his uneasiness. General Zhang did not have many accomplishments in commanding and military affairs. He was far inferior to the 2 surrendered generals of the other 2 armies. The reason why he could control the other 2 armies was that he was an old acquaintance of Emperor Rome. The southern punitive army often relied on the magical power of the 2 saints to conquer cities and territories. But now that the 2 saints suddenly left, he had no one to rely on, so he began to feel guilty. After another 3 or 4 days, there was no more news. The Rhone Kingdom held a celebration party after conquering the capital of Donghai Kingdom. Zhang Pulu got drunk at the banquet. After drinking, he pulled someone over to talk. It turned out that before Lu Gongzan left that day, his expression was flustered, and he looked extremely uneasy. The Tongtian Dragon King had always been an immortal in the eyes of the soldiers of the Rhone Kingdom. And he was. But something made him lose his composure like that. Was it true or not? If everyone was sure of what happened, they would realize the seriousness of the matter and keep their mouths shut. But if everyone was guessing the truth of the matter and suspected that General Zhang was talking nonsense after drinking, they would have the desire to talk about it. The phrase "keep their mouths shut" had always been a beautiful yearning. Therefore, General Zhang's private words spread quickly. Many people on Midland heard the news and took action. But 1 year ago, Lu Gongzan was just a nobody. Most people knew little about him. Only the most powerful and well-informed people knew what it meant for him to leave in a hurry. When the Purple Knight Immortal, who was in charge of Punglai, heard the news, it was already 3 days after Lu Gongzan left Donghai Kingdom. He was stunned for a while before he sent Qin Fengzi to him. The hall where Lord Donghai used to discuss matters with his subordinates remained unchanged. The people of the lifeless immortal sect installed many everlasting lamps in the hall, causing this place to not be as gloomy and cold as before. The Purple Knight Enlightened sat on Lord Donghai's former throne while Qin Fengzi stood below. The true state cultivator studied the necromancer for a while before saying, "What kind of person do you think Li Yunxin is?" The hall was spacious. His voice echoed in the hall, making it sound hollow. Although Qin Fengzi was someone close to the 10,000-year-old ancestor, he couldn't be compared to the Purple Knight Enlightened Master. In the past, he had only seen him from afar a few times. At that time, he was surrounded by a group of high-grade cultivators that disciples like Qin Fengzi could not approach, because one belonged to the sect of cultivators, and the other belonged to the sect of necromancers. The 2 of them could not be said to be familiar with each other. Even after they returned from fighting with Li Yunxin, they were sent by the Patriarch to serve the Purple Knight Immortal. Facing such a question, Qin Fengzi revealed a slightly frightened expression. This sentence made him feel as if he had become a close friend of this enlightened master, and he could chat with him casually. But he knew that was not the case, so he thought for a while before answering. In front of the enlightened master, I don't dare to make a rash decision. The Purple Knight Enlightened Master leaned forward. His clothes rubbed against each other, making a rustling sound. He looked at Qin Fengzi with interest. I heard that you used to be in the vast army and escaped to Li Yunxin's side, and he spared your life. Later, I heard that he killed hundreds of thousands of elite sea demons in a frenzy. But at such a time, he spared your life and handed you over to the Patriarch. Yet you say that you don't dare to make a rash decision. Are you lying? Qin Fengzi was silent for a while before saying, "At that time, I had a conflict of interest with him. He spared my life because I was useful to him." The Purple Knight Enlightened Master laughed. "In that case, you have a good impression of him." Qin Fengzi frowned. "The Patriarch said that he is a great enemy of our sect." The Enlightened Master laughed and waved his hand. "No need to be so cautious. Qin Fengzi, I know you. You are a diligent necromancer. The Patriarch likes you, and I have a good impression of you as well. There are only the two of us here, and I am not testing you." At this point he stopped laughing and sighed. "Actually, my impression of Li Yunxin isn't bad. The patriarch said that Li Yunxin pretended to be courteous with him, but was actually harboring evil intentions. But I met him before he went to Dragon Island, and spoke to him for a while. Just from what he said, I feel that the patriarch might not be telling the truth. At that time, he clearly did not have any ill intentions towards our sect." Qin Fengzi was silent. The Purple Knight Enlightened Master stared at him for a while and said calmly, "It seems that I know what you think of him." He stood up from the throne, and walked a few steps with his hands behind his back. He sighed and said, "It seems that the rumors are indeed untrustworthy. There are many rumors about Li Yunxin. They all say that he is a sinister, cunning, and ruthless person. Such a person should be deserted by everyone, and have no friends to entrust him to. Before I met him I thought so too, but now that I have met him, I feel that he is not what I imagined him to be. When I learned what happened afterwards, my opinion of him was greatly improved. One is me." He pointed at himself, then at Qin Fengzi. "The other is me. He is one of the smart people in the sect. Both of us have a good impression of him, which means that this is the truth." Qin Fengzi was slightly frightened. "How can I be compared to the Enlightened Master?" The Purple Knight Enlightened Master laughed. "You are so cautious and fearful. Why? Do you think that I am disloyal to the sect because of that Li Yunxin? Or do you think that I am testing you on purpose to see if you are disloyal?" Seeing that Qin Fengzi did not speak, he shook his head. "Neither. Qin Fengzi, listen to my orders." After saying the last two sentences, he became serious. Qin Fengzi was slightly startled. "Yes. The patriarch told me that Li Yunxin caused trouble on Dragon Island again. The immortal Lord Shinryu is currently cultivating, and cannot be distracted to deal with him. Thus, the patriarch planned to lure him out of Dragon Island. I am asking you about your impression of him, because the patriarch's plan is to use a few people to lure him out. If he really is a heartless person, then the patriarch's plan needs to be discussed. But now, since the patriarch, me, and you all think that Li Yunxin is a sentimental person, it means that he also has a weakness. When he was insignificant, he befriended an artist called Lu Gongzan in Wei City. Although there were many obstacles after that, he still took care of that person. It can be seen that Lu Gongzan is very important to him. The patriarch's plan is very simple. Spread the news that Li Yunxin is in danger on Dragon Island, and see if that Lu Gongzan will come to save him. If he really comes, it means that this plan can be used. I just received news that Lu Gongzan did abandon Rongjun a few days ago, and hurried to the East Sea. It seems that he has fallen into a trap. So there is something I need you to do. Go find Lu Gongzan. Tell him that you are also Li Yunxin's friend, and are dissatisfied with the immortal sect. Now I can't bear to see Li Yunxin fall into a trap, and his friend fall into a trap. So I am going to inform him." "Jimren," Qin Fengzi hurriedly interrupted him. "Why should I do this? It's not that I don't want to work for the immortal sect, but I am afraid that my own stupidity will ruin the patriarch's plan. Because you are the most suitable person for this matter." The Zai Jimren looked at him meaningfully. "What you said to him is all based on facts. You are someone who can say a few words in front of the patriarch. The patriarch sees you as a genius in magic. You were placed in the vast army to be the commander of the necromancers. He originally planned to use you after a period of experience. You should think so. But when the immortal sect was in trouble, no one actually informed you. As a result, you and the other disciples were in danger. You had no choice but to seek a way out from Li Yunxin, and he actually saved you. One side is resentment, and the other side is kindness. After spending a few days with Li Yunxin, he became quite kind to you. He also discussed arrays and spells with you, which greatly benefited you. It is not strange that you became disloyal, and even went to inform the immortal sect. I heard that Lu Gongzan is a true disciple of Li Yunxin, and he is also very good at scheming. Only if you go, he may believe you. If it were someone else, I am afraid that they would be seen through immediately. Tell me, who else but you should go this time?" Qin Fengzi's face turned pale. His body swayed twice, and he suddenly knelt on the ground shouting, "Jimren, please understand. I have absolutely no such intention. The Purple Knight Immortal sighed. Do you still think that I am testing you? Stand up and talk. What is this? Qin Fengzi refused to get up. Even if you are not testing me, I have absolutely no such intention. Moreover, if Lu Gongzan is as meticulous as you said, how would he believe me? Even if I go and tell him the reason you mentioned, it will only be between betrayal and non-betrayal. The immortal sect has given me a new lease of life. If I betray them just because I suffered some grievances here, and gained some benefits there, isn't it too far-fetched? The Purple Knight Immortal smiled. You have also thought of this, very good. This shows that you are suitable for this kind of thing. Qin Fengzi, Li Yunqin became a great demon a long time ago. And Lu Gongzan was just a poor old painter at that time. At that time, the two of them did not spend much time together, and there should not be any deep feelings between them. But Li Yunqin valued him, saved him several times, and showed kindness to him. Think about it. If the two of them were ordinary people in the marketplace, and only used common sense to think about things, how could they have come to this stage today? Whether it is Li Yunqin or Lu Gongzan, they are all people of character. When people of character do things, a thought or a look to their liking will make them friends for life and death. Now that you go to see him, you will become a person of character. When Lu Gongzan sees you like this, he will feel that Li Yunqin is worthy of you. The flaw you mentioned is actually the best guarantee. Qin Fengzi was silent for a while, and slowly stood up. In that case, Zhenren wants me to do this errand. Sigh. Fine. Chapter 738. If it was the Lord of the Eastern Sea or any other sovereign, he would have ordered the servants to leave at this point. But Spiritual Master Purple Knight seemed to be very interested in Qin Fengzi. After looking at him for a while, he said, Junior Marshal Brother, why did you sigh? Qin Fengzi hesitated for a while, as if he didn't know what to say next. But when he looked up at Spiritual Master Purple Knight again, he found that the other's eyes were meaningful. Then an idea came into his mind, and before he could know what it was, the words had slipped out of his mouth, as if they were possessed by some supernatural force. I heard that after you returned to Ruoshui with serious injuries, you lost your cultivation and became a ghost cultivator. I also heard that the root of a ghost cultivator's existence is an obsession. Qin Fengzi looked at him. What is Spiritual Master's obsession? This question seemed to have nothing to do with what they were going to talk about today. It shouldn't be asked by Qin Fengzi, who was still trembling with fear. And it shouldn't be asked by anyone. The obsession of a ghost cultivator was a matter of life and death. If it was known by others, the consequences could be serious or light. If an expert designed according to the obsession, it would be very disadvantageous to the ghost cultivator. But when Spiritual Master Purple Knight heard it, he didn't immediately answer or reprimand. His expression became even more profound. After looking at the servants with a scrutinizing gaze, he smiled instead. My obsession is the same as everyone else's in the Celestial Gate. To return to the mainland and rebuild the Celestial Gate. On this point, Ancestor has taught us by example, and made us remember it every day. I am no exception. Elder Ancestor once said that if anyone dares to challenge the belief of our lifeless immortal gate, everyone has the right to kill them. What I am doing now, I feel that I am following the teachings of our lifeless immortal gate's master. And I have a clear conscience. Junior Marshal Brother, what do you think? Qin Fengzi looked straight at him, as if he needed to use a lot of strength to say the next sentence. But when all the strength was added together, in the end, it only became a hoarse sentence that echoed softly in the empty hall. The great formation that the ancestor set up in the vast sea, what is it for? Spiritual Master Purple Knight revealed an imperceptible smile. He paced around the hall with his hands behind his back, then turned to look at Qin Fengzi. What you asked is the question that many people in the sect wanted to ask, but didn't dare to ask. I wasn't wrong about you. I once asked the ancestor this question. He paused and looked at Qin Fengzi. Then the ancestor ordered me to see Li Yunqin. Perhaps it's because both of us have the same question. That's why he sent you to me. On this trip, we'll act according to circumstances, Reverend Violet Knight said softly. We'll take a good look and see what kind of person Lu Gongzan is. Again, he emphasized, adapt to the situation. About 3 to 4 breaths later, Qin Fengzi said in a low voice, I understand. Then let's go. The capital of Donghai Nation had fallen for several days. The northern half of this small country was already under Emperor Rong's rule, but the southern half was still in chaos. The resistance army, the revolutionary army, and the ambitious people all appeared, and it was even more chaotic than the occupied area in the north. In the midst of all this chaos, it was already the end of the year, the last day of the year. However, the fall of the country was imminent, and it seemed that not many people cared about such things. Except for Baishui town on the southeast coast. In fact, more than a month ago, Baishui town had already been occupied by the troops of Sea King Lu Fei. Half a month after Lu Baishui's fleet went out to sea, pirates who had been active on the ocean suddenly launched a large-scale attack. After 3 battles, they wiped out the Donghai Navy and landed there. At that time, many people were puzzled by the behavior of the pirates. They could come and go freely on the sea, but on land, they were like tigers in a cage, waiting for the Donghai Nation's army to encircle them. Only then did they realize that the pirates had foresight. Soon after Baishui town was occupied, Emperor Rong's army went all the way south. The war at the border had already caused them to be badly battered. Who would care about the scabies here to relieve the itch? So today, there was no war in Baishui town, and people lived as usual. Many ignorant people even thought that after the arrival of the pirates, their lives were better than before. Since there was no government, they didn't have to pay taxes at the end of the year, and they could eat for many days. Lu Fei, who had always been famous but had never seen his real face, issued several laws to strictly prohibit disturbances, theft, and other acts. He also opened the government's granary and distributed large tracts of land that originally belonged to the officials and nobles. Although most of the land was distributed to the pirates who came from the sea, at least the townspeople felt that the pirates would not have any evil intentions now that they had a livelihood. It also made them feel that these people didn't seem to want to plunder and then return to the sea, but intended to operate here for a long time. What's more, many people were surprised to find that a considerable number of the pirates were people they knew in the past. For example, someone who killed a notorious country squire, in a rage because his land was seized and his family was separated. Everyone thought he was long dead. For example, someone who set a fire at night to take revenge because his sister, who was a servant in the county magistrate's family, was beaten to death. Everyone thought he was long dead. Many such examples made the townspeople feel more cordial, and they began to realize that the pirates were not as heinous as they were rumored to be. Many people who couldn't survive on the land, or who had a deep hatred for others, went there. The people didn't know much about legal principles and laws. Their situation and limited knowledge made them naturally sympathize with people who were of the same class and had similar experiences as them. The atmosphere created by this kind of simple kindness made the town even more peaceful. Only a very small number of people would notice and think about such a thing. Just like not all the rich were arrogant and lascivious, not all the poor were simple and kind. Among the many pirates, there must be many who committed crimes and were cruel and violent. Otherwise, the Sea King Lu Fei wouldn't have been in a stalemate with the government and the army for so many years. But now there were no such people in the town. However, this also made them realize the depth of Sea King Lu Fei's intentions. They really planned to come here and not leave. Because of these reasons, on this day at the end of the year, Whitewater Town was more lively than usual. Red lanterns were hung under the eaves of the houses. Since early in the morning, every family was busy taking off the faux characters and couplets that had been exposed to the wind and sun for a year, and replacing them with new ones. Smoke was coming out of the chimneys. The housewives were busy frying, and the whole town was filled with the fragrance of meat and oil. There was residual snow on the streets, and the wind was biting, but with hot food in their stomachs and money in their arms, they didn't feel cold even when facing the wind. This was also thanks to the pirates who landed on the land. It was said that the Sea King Lu Fei distributed his personal wealth to the townspeople, and every family received 2 taels of silver. Those who were old, weak, sick, or disabled in their families had more meat and a pot of oil. Such a peaceful scene attracted many refugees. But the Sea King set up a porridge stall 10 miles away from the town, and sent a team of strong and fierce-looking pirates to guard it. He only selected some young and strong people who were skilled, or had curable diseases, and let them into the town. The rest were blocked outside the town. But even so, the new owner of Whitewater Town won a good reputation. At the moment, the new owner was in the big house of the East Sea Inn. Nearly 2 months ago, he had a pleasant conversation with a guest from the north here. Now there were still 2 people in the house, but the scene was very different. Lu Fei, or Lu Baishui, wrapped himself in a heavy fur cloak, leaned against the stove, and looked out of the window with a gloomy expression. This was the highest point of Whitewater Town, and he could see the bustling scene in the town. If one had magical power and good hearing, he could hear many people talking about how good the Sea King Lu Fei was. But he didn't seem to be interested in these things. He sighed, stretched out his hand from the fur, grabbed the wine bottle on the low table, and quickly retracted it, as if he was afraid of the cold. After warming it for a while, he drank a mouthful of wine. I wasn't like this before. Lu Baishui sighed again. 2 months ago, when Li Yunqin was here, I wasn't afraid of the cold at all. You are immortal, and you can't stand the turbulence of spiritual power during the battle of magical power. You're lucky that you're still alive. Another person was like him before, standing on the balcony with his hands behind his back, looking at the sea. When he said this, he turned around. It was Lu Gongzan, who was rumored to be heading to the East Sea in a panic. But now you're on land, and you're an old friend of Prince Rong. He has promised to let you govern Whitewater Town, and in the future, you can be considered a feudal lord, which is better than drifting on the sea. Lu Gongzan looked at his complexion. It's not impossible to make your body better. I can teach you a set of martial arts. As long as you can calm your mind and practice hard, your body will be as strong as before in a few years, or as long as 30 years. If you continue to practice hard, you can. Lu Baishui raised his hand lazily. That's enough. Before I met you, I was a little interested in these things. After that, forget it. I saw the immortals on the sea with my own eyes. I saw the immortals fighting. In the past, when I was at Aquarius Bay, I already felt that the East Sea's water demons were terrifying. But that night, when I saw Li Yunqin fighting with someone, I realized that there really are such methods in this world. Sigh. You people, you either had a fortuitous encounter, or started to temper your mind from a young age. As for me, humph. He laughed and drank another mouthful of wine. After all these years of wandering, I can't calm my mind. Now that I've seen these things, I feel even more indifferent to everything. Cultivation, forget it. Those people in the town think that immortals are all good, eating from a golden rice bowl, and sleeping on a white jade bed. But now I know that being an immortal isn't necessarily happy, and I'm afraid it's even more dangerous. Thanks to you, he dragged out his voice and curled his lips. I have this town justifiably. Being able to settle down my brothers can also be considered as getting rid of a disaster on the sea. From now on, I'll retire here. I have an endless supply of gold and silver, and if I practice my knife every day, I might be able to live for another 30 to 50 years. It's considered a happy life for mortals. Chapter 739. Lu Gongzan nodded and walked to the window. You can see it clearly. Because of this, you will be happier than many people in the future. Lu Baishui curled his lips again. Alas, this is my fate. It is indeed your fate. Lu Gongzan smiled. On my way here, many villages and towns were destroyed in the tsunami. Only your Whitewater Town is safe. It is also God's will. Lu Baishui laughed. God's will? What is God's will? Why do you think I chose to live in Whitewater Town? The terrain here is special. The waves of the tsunami will be divided into 2 sides when they reach the sea. It has not been like this for thousands of years. It is my good judgment. I say, old immortal, what on earth are you doing here? Is Li Yunqin in trouble? Lu Gongzan was silent for a while by the window and whispered, I plan to celebrate the new year with him at the end of the year. Alas! Then he is in trouble. Lu Baishui raised his eyebrows. What kind of trouble can a person like him have? He is like an immortal. There are many immortals and demons. Lu Gongzan let out a sigh. I will stay here for a while. I will stay here for a day or a few days. Don't reveal my whereabouts. Lu Baishui raised the small wine jar and rolled his eyes. Happy New Year. When it was dark and the red lanterns on the street were lit, a seemingly down-and-out painter came to the door of the Donghai Inn. He was about 50 or 60 years old, and his skin was like tree bark. He was wearing a Taoist robe that was neither old nor new. It looked like it had just been washed and ironed with hot water by an iron ladle. When he appeared at the door, the waiter thought he was here to ask for money. The kitchen of the Donghai Inn had been working hard these days, and they had to steam dozens of pounds of steamed buns every day. The waiter had been busy all day and was freezing in front of the door. He was eager to get rid of the steamed buns that were as hard as stones, so that he could go home after work for New Year's Eve. So when he saw Lao Dao, he quickly opened the steamer and put the steamed buns in the white curtain. As he stuffed the steamed buns into the white curtain, he exhaled white gas. Come on, take them all away. Let's all go home for the new year. Hearing this, the old painter coughed. I didn't come to ask for a reward. I am here to look for someone. As he spoke, he stood to the side. It was as if the man's words had insulted his character. Annoyed, the waiter threw the steamed bun back into the steamer and frowned. Who are you looking for? Who do you know here? Are you from outside? He coughed to make himself look solemn. Lao Dao, I'm looking for. There's no one you're looking for. Ah. The waiter raised his face and ignored him. Lao Dao also frowned and looked at him, but he did not leave. Instead, he took 2 steps to the side and stood by the door of the inn without saying a word. The waiter thought he didn't know how to appreciate kindness and wanted him to stand there and suffer in the cold. About an hour later, a few people came to ask for the remaining steamed buns. Only then did the waiter pack up his things and plan to return to the inn. At this time, he looked to the side and saw that Lao Dao was shivering in the cold, but he still straightened his back and tried his best to look solemn and dignified. But the darker the night, the stronger the wind. The old man was so cold that he sniffed his nose. No matter what, he couldn't be dignified. His heart softened and he sighed. Ah, good. You can really endure it. Who are you looking for? Today, I'm the only waiter in the inn. The others are our boss. Are you looking for the wrong place? Lao Dao trembled and said, Aye. At this time, Lu Baishui came out of the inn. His whole body was wrapped in fur. Only his face was exposed. He seemed to be taking a breather at the door. The waiter hurriedly turned his face. Boss, there's someone looking for someone. Lu Baishui glanced at Lao Dao, thought for a moment and waved his hand. Call him in. He turned around and went back. The waiter looked at Lao Dao. Ah, how can you say this? Why didn't you say you were looking for our boss earlier? Master Dao, please come in, please come in. Lao Dao nodded to the waiter. He looked down at his Taoist robe, then combed his beard and walked in. There were only 3 oil lamps in the inn, so it was very dim. The old painter entered the door and was about to find his way when he heard a voice coming from the east stairs. Go to the 3rd floor, room number 1. He calmed himself down and followed the voice up the stairs. On the 3rd floor, he squinted his eyes and searched for a while. He found room number 1 at the end of the corridor. He stood in front of the door and hesitated for a moment. He reached out and knocked on the door, but the door opened by itself, and a gust of warm air blew into his face. Then he could clearly see the inside of the room. There were no candles, but it was very bright. It was like the afternoon, and there was a warm yellow light. A black-haired Taoist priest in his 40s or 50s was also wearing a Taoist robe and sitting in front of a table. This Taoist priest's Taoist robe was also simple and pale blue, but there was not a single crease on it, as if it was woven by flowing water. The old painter saw his face and hurriedly said, Ah, I went the wrong way. I went the wrong way. Forgive me, forgive me. As he spoke, he was about to leave, but he saw the person raise his head. Brother Zhao, you're right. It's me, Lu Gongzan. Lao Dao was stunned. He stared at him for a while, as if he didn't know what to say. At that moment, someone in the town set off firecrackers. Only after a series of popping sounds did he regain his consciousness. He blinked his eyes. You I. As he spoke, he walked into the room as if he was sleepwalking. He didn't know how he sat down next to Lu Gongzan. He didn't know what he was thinking. He stared at him for a long time, then said, "You should be 66 this year." After saying this, he seemed to wake up from a dream and quickly shut his mouth. When he saw Lu Gongzan with his own eyes, he was so surprised that he almost forgot his current identity. In the months that he left Li Yunxin, Lu Gongzan did something that Li Yunxin couldn't do. He established his own intelligence network. Even if this network was very loose and not presentable in the eyes of many people. He used to be a down-and-out painter who traveled the martial arts world. Although he didn't have any skills, he had a particularly clever mouth because he was disheartened by the affairs of the world. He went to many cities and countries, and also met many painters. The profession of a painter was relatively special. The more skilled ones could own a temple or a Taoist temple. Those who were even more brilliant could become the honored guest of the nobles and ministers. If they could reach the highest realm that mortals could reach, they could even become officials. Therefore, painters seemed to be naturally more noble than ordinary people. They could slightly pry into the world of the Taoist cultivators. But they were also rooted in the secular world, which also made them a group with a certain degree of exclusivity. Lao Dao had traveled the martial arts world, and could be said to have a wide range of friends. Although he couldn't be considered a close friend, his relationships with people were not bad. Therefore, in the months that he traveled the world, he found some old friends that he had made in the past. When he met those with good talent, and got along well, he would pass on some painting techniques. His cultivation technique came from Li Yunxin. It was a technique that had been lost for a long time. Today there were only 4 people in the world who truly knew this technique. As one of them, and with a cultivation that could be said to ascend to the heavens in the cultivation world, how could people not worship him? It was also because of him that many painters knew that more than 1,000 years ago, they were decent cultivators, who could stand on equal footing with the cultivators of the orthodoxies and sword sections. There were not only 2 Taoist orthodox sects in the world, but 3. These painters, who had been covered by dust for 1,000 years, were suppressed by Daotong and Kinzo for being unorthodox sects. It turned out that they were set up. Now, as Lu Gongzan rose to the top, these painters, who were scattered all over Midland, immediately realized that they had found a backbone, a strong and powerful core. Not only did they have the legal orthodoxy, but they also had practical benefits. Therefore, Lu Gongzan had gradually become the #1 painter in the world. However, he was never willing to accept this position. He said that the real master of the art of painting was currently traveling the world. When that master came back, the art of painting would be revived. As long as something could bring great benefits to people, and someone started it, there would naturally be many others who would actively complete the rest. Without Lu Gongzan doing it himself, these painters had already formed a loose group and divided themselves into different classes. After that, they would offer everything they had done to this old man, and thus a basic channel of information would be formed. This was not the first time for Lu Gongzan to use this channel. Rong Jun had conquered cities and conquered territories with an irresistible force, and those painters had contributed a lot. This man in front of him was also an old friend of Lu Gongzan. Today, he came here to deliver a message. However, seeing that his old friend had become so much younger, and had such a great temperament, he felt like he had fallen into a dream, and even lost his composure. Outside the door, he tried his best to look serious, because he didn't want to be looked down upon by others. But now he realized that all his efforts were in vain. Nevertheless, Lu Gongzan had seen this kind of situation many times. He smiled and said, "Time doesn't matter in cultivation. Brother Zhao, what message do you have for me?" Painter Zhao silently pinched his own thigh to wake himself up. He started regretting sitting so close to Ji Hao. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that he couldn't breathe next to Lu Gongzan. There seemed to be some kind of powerful aura around him. Painter Zhao started to feel that his Taoist robe didn't fit him well, and he had too much white hair. His face was too shriveled, and his appearance was somewhat comical. This caused his body to slowly wither, as if he could shrink so that he couldn't be seen. He also didn't have the clear speech he had when he was outside the door. He stammered, Yes, Lao Dao Chui. That Lao Dao Chui. The one from Chuzhou City. Ah, you might not remember him. But he's now my superior. Ah, hall master say that. Lu Gongzan looked at him tolerantly, not in a hurry. Painter Zhao's current appearance reminded him of himself in the past. Not too long ago, he might have been like this in front of Brother Xian. Brother Xian also wasn't in a hurry at that time. He smiled again, picked up the wine pot on the table, poured him a cup of light wine, and pushed it in front of him. Yes, I remember. Today is New Year's Eve, Brother Zhao. We two old brothers can be considered fated. Come, drink a cup of wine and warm yourself up first. Speak slowly. Painter Zhao used both hands to carefully pick up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. He felt a wave of warmth rise from his stomach, and his body immediately became slightly livelier. Thus he spoke more quickly. Yes, this Lao Dao Chui told me to say that recently, there was someone who said he was looking for you. He said he had news of a friend of yours, said your friend is at sea. He told everything he knew in bits and pieces, drinking 3 more cups of light wine in the process. After 4 cups of wine, he felt an indescribable sense of comfort throughout his body. Since he was a painter, he had naturally tried to refine qi, but to no avail. But now, after drinking Lu Gongzan's wine, he felt as if there was a trickle of water flowing through his meridians, as if a perennially dry river had been added with running water, nourishing his bones and muscles. After he finished speaking, he was no longer as nervous and embarrassed. Only then did he realize the changes in his body. He knew that the person in front of him, Lu Gongzan, had definitely given him benefits. The benefits that ordinary people in the secular world wanted were nothing more than money and power. Although the two were rare, there was always a possibility. But how could the benefits that he had obtained be something that money and power could compare to? Perhaps it meant cultivation and longevity. Joy and excitement surged in Painter Zhao's heart, such that he didn't know how to sit or what to say. It was like a person who had obtained a precious treasure and was holding it in his bosom. He was eager to take it out to have a look and examine it, but he did not dare to close his eyes and meditate in front of Lu Gongzan. Lu Gongzan listened to the news he brought, thought for a moment, and let out a light breath. Then, seeing through Painter Zhao's thoughts, he smiled faintly. Good old Zhao, I've troubled you to make this trip. What you just drank was golden jade wine. It can connect the spirit and flow qi, strengthening the body. It will be of great benefit to your cultivation. In a moment, go back and find a quiet place to breathe and refine qi. Use a few days of effort to dissolve the medicinal strength. It will guarantee that you won't suffer from illness for the rest of your life. Painter Zhao immediately stood up after receiving this affirmative reply. He opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. Lu Gongzan nodded. I know what you're thinking. Everything is said without words. Go. When you run into old friends, tell them that I haven't forgotten them. Painter Zhao shut his mouth. He wiped his eyes, nodded heavily 3 times, and then hurriedly withdrew. After he left for a while, Lu Gongzan stood up and slowly walked to the window. Painter Zhao wasn't the first person to bring this kind of news. In recent days, there had already been dozens of such messages. He believed that there would be even more in the coming days. Each person's description of claiming that Lu Gongzan's friend was at sea had a different appearance and identity. This meant that someone was spreading the news, hoping to use this method to get in touch with him. In this boundless world, it was very difficult for a person to find another person. It wasn't difficult to meet, but to let that person know his intentions. The other party couldn't find him, so he cast a wide net. And he also had a net and many sources of information. In this way, when the 2 nets met, a lot of information would be gathered, and the person he wanted to find would always be found. This was a good method. The friend at sea naturally referred to Li Yunxin. The person who spread the news should be someone from the Lifeless Immortal sect. In the Lifeless Immortal sect, someone wanted to see him. But for what? He thought for a while, and heard the sound of firecrackers outside the window. Looking down from here, the lights of every house in Whitewater Town were lit, and it looked very warm. Brother Xian was at the Dragon Island on the sea. Dragon Island. What was it like? Right now, what kind of situation was he in? Lu Gongzan really hoped that tonight, even if it was just tonight, Li Yunxin wouldn't stay in some damp and cold place, and wouldn't be too worried. So he let out a light breath and said in a low voice, "Brother Xian, Happy New Year." Chapter 740. Right now, Li Yunxin wasn't in a cold and damp environment. This house was built with futuristic technology and had all kinds of unimaginable facilities. It wasn't something that could be described with just the word comfortable. He planned to find a key program in the system of this house to counter the true dragon, but it seemed that he did not make much progress. Until the first day after the spring festival, he was still trapped in this house. It was just that the conditions were a bit better than before, because he thought of something. If this house was just an ordinary house, there was no need to create a living system that could provide all kinds of food. Since there was such a thing, it meant that this house should be used for long-term survival. For those who still ate raw meat and drank blood, a piece of raw meat was enough to satisfy them. For the people in this world, a book, a bottle of wine, and a few dishes should be enough to satisfy them. However, for many people in Li Yunxin's world, it was unbearable to stay in a confined space for a long time without any external communication network or several kinds of entertainment equipment. The food, background, and movies that he created should be enough for the people in his world. But the people in the other world should have higher requirements. He felt that this house still had potential in terms of entertainment. In the end, he found it. He didn't do it on purpose, but when he was looking for the key point that he needed, he accidentally created it. On the first day of the new year, when Shinryu came to visit Li Yunxin after a few days, he had already stayed in this small space for almost a month. The last time they met, Li Yunxin seemed to be living a happy life, and even bought some New Year's goods. The house was also clean and lively, and the atmosphere was festive. When Shinryu showed up this time, she was slightly surprised. It wasn't because Li Yunxin was living a good life, but the house's appearance changed so much that she couldn't recognize it. It seemed to be an extremely wide space. There was no dome, no walls. Looking around, the sky was glowing with a strange light purple color, so it shouldn't be the sky of Midland. In the west, there was an incomparably huge full moon, as if it could be reached with one's hand, and there were even some huge mountains on the moon. There were two smaller moons in the south. One was light blue, and the other was light white. The three huge moons overlooking the world made people involuntarily feel a strange sense of fear. The land under the giant moon was flat and dark purple. The color did not come from the vegetation. In fact, it was desolate, but from the sand itself. But on such a flat land, there were many towering mountains. The strange-looking rocks on the mountain peaks were like long and thin awls that pierced the sky, as if they were going to stab the three giant moons down. But after the initial shock, Shinryu quickly realized that what he saw was an illusion. The dome and the walls projected an image that was enough to pass off as real, because she saw Li Yunxin nearby. If it was really a vast space, he would have run away long ago. However, Shinryu was also surprised by Li Yunxin's current appearance. He was now wearing a strange outfit. He was wrapped in a huge white robe, which made him look bloated. His head was hidden in an equally large round helmet, and his face couldn't be seen. That was because half of the helmet seemed to be made of golden glass or colored glass, covering his face. Who else could make such a strange appearance other than him? Li Yunxin walked out from behind a pile of rocks that were taller than a person, and pressed on the side of the helmet. There was a tearing sound, and the golden helmet popped open, revealing his face. Shinryu was surprised and delighted to see that his face didn't look good. She didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she thought that she saw the dark circles under Li Yunxin's eyes. She couldn't help but take a few steps to the side, and saw the things behind the pile of rocks. The ground was a mess. There were transparent bottles, plates, and small bones. There were also some colorful bags. Although she didn't know what they were for, she thought that they had something to do with food. She had seen the ability of the house to put things away by itself, and was astonished to see it in such a way. But soon, she looked around her surroundings and smiled. "You didn't have a good time?" Li Yunxin looked at her and frowned. "What? You took good care of this place a few days ago, But now it's a mess. You didn't have to do it yourself. It can only mean that you did it on purpose. This kind of feeling. Shinryu pondered for a moment. I can't say. But I know it's not a good feeling. I'm playing. I'm happy. Li Yunxin said. At the same time, he put on the helmet so that Shinryu couldn't see his face. But Shinryu didn't want to shut up. She smiled again and looked around again. Where is this? Alien. You won't understand. Li Yunxin said in a muffled voice. Planet MA67793 LPPB. It's the first habitable planet discovered by the people of that world. Do you understand? Illiterate. Native. Shinryu thought for a while and didn't get angry. Although I don't understand, I know you're talking about another world. She looked into the distance again. I also think that you seem to be in such a vast world instead of a house or a jungle. It means that you like a wide and empty place. Li Yunxin, do you feel suffocated after staying in this house for so long? Li Yunxin's muffled voice came from the helmet. Haha, self-righteous. Isn't it normal for me to feel suffocated? Who wouldn't feel suffocated after staying in one place for a long time? Is there a need to guess? It's not the suffocation of mortals. Shinryu stopped laughing and said seriously, I've experienced what you're experiencing. Mortals feel suffocated in a house, but it's not unbearable. Many people are imprisoned for decades, but they still live and don't go crazy. But you and I, we're not cultivators who have abandoned their emotions. The world we've seen is too vast. The wider the world is, and the more powerful it is, the more we can't stand being trapped in one place. Especially when you don't know when you can leave this place. That's another thing. You said that you want to understand the mysteries of this house. The progress these days isn't going well, is it? Shinryu's words might be correct. Staying in this house was getting more and more unbearable. But it wasn't the suffocation that she said, but the feeling of isolation. Li Yunxin had experienced this feeling before. When he entered his own scroll, he was like an omniscient god. He was the entire space, and the entire space was him. There were even a few times when he felt that if there was life in a higher dimension than humans, it would be the same feeling he had at that time. When he returned to the real world, he felt uncomfortable. He could force himself to get used to it after a while, but it wouldn't disappear. Because of this, he didn't enter his own scroll often, because every time he entered, after the extreme sense of fulfillment, there would be a longer period of pain. And now he was here. This place was even more isolated than the real world. This house was isolated from the spiritual power. Li Yunxin felt that the space this house was in didn't belong to the Midland world, but something like a crevice. Thus, he realized that he seemed to have been abandoned on a deserted island. He should be able to feel the suffocation that Shinryu mentioned. And it was 100 times stronger than that. It should be right on Li Yunxin's mind. He wrapped himself in the strange costume, turned his face suddenly, and without a word, returned to the back of the strange stone. From the moment he came to this secret room, he had been proud and seemed to have the upper hand. This made the previous owner of this house, Shinryu, angry and afraid, but he couldn't do anything to him. Now it seemed that the situation had changed. These days, Shinryu had been tortured by Li Yunxin, and now that he had this opportunity, he wouldn't let him go easily. So the illusion took 2 steps to the side and followed him behind the strange rock. I heard that after Lu Gongzan knew about you, he immediately left Rongjun, who was still attacking the city, and came to the East Sea. Now the lifeless immortal sect has sent out an emissary. Shinryu smiled. What do you think he's going to do? Li Yunxin went back behind the strange rock and sat down against a natural stone wall. Hearing Shinryu's words, he said in a muffled voice, Guess what? What good things will you guys do? Either block it or kill it. It's a pity that before I came to the East Sea, I made him the dragon body of hatred. Now he should be at a very high level. And I left him some painting books. Humph! He simply took off his helmet and showed a mocking smile. More importantly, he has a smart brain. Different from you stupid things. What can you do to him? Shinryu was surprised and smiled, but she wasn't angry. Oh, so you admit that you care a lot about him. Even a fool can see that, big sister. Li Yunxin frowned. On the other hand, you came to present your treasures to me as if you had discovered one of the top 10 unsolved mysteries of the world. That has refreshed my understanding of stupidity. Hearing you speak seriously, I feel uneasy. But now that you're sharp-tongued and mean, I'm relieved. Shinryu let out a sigh. I know you're the most ambitious person. Even when you're in trouble, you're not willing to act pitiful. Now that your aura is even stronger, it shows that you're the most uncertain. But you guessed wrong. I'm not going to block and kill Lu Gongzan. You did give him a good cultivation. And to kill him, you have to pay a great price. But there's another way. Someone as strong as you, who can summon the help of the Grand Elder. Isn't he also trapped in this room? I heard from the lifeless immortal sect that they're going to express their goodwill to him. For example, if you don't fight, you don't get to know each other. And you've known each other for a long time. They can't bear to see you die like this. So they're going to persuade him not to fall into the trap. Although it's more troublesome to do this, it's also more effortless. Li Yunxin. Shinryu looked at him. Your progress isn't going well. I'll give you one last chance. Tell me everything you know. And then I'll think about how to deal with you. But no matter what, it's better than Lu Gongzan dying first, and you dying later. Li Yunxin frowned slightly, as if he was seriously considering Shinryu's suggestion. It took a full quarter of an hour. In the distant sky, the 3 huge moons slowly descended towards the south. Thus, the northern horizon was suffused with a faint golden light. Shinryu waited patiently until the golden light covered half of the sky, and the 3 giant moons fell below the horizon. She saw Li Yunxin, who had been staring in that direction, turn to look at her, and said something that didn't make sense. In the morning on this planet, the sky is usually white. Take a guess, why is it golden now? Shinryu paused for a moment. She didn't know why, but she suddenly had a bad premonition. But before this, she was full of confidence, thinking that she had the upper hand. In the past, her emotions would never change so quickly in front of others. But looking at Li Yunxin's face in front of her, she felt that she couldn't control her emotions. This guy is poisonous. He was always able to easily stir up the emotions of others. Or in layman's terms, afraid of him. Shinryu slowly understood one thing. Every time this person doesn't play by the rules, things won't go well, such as now. He suddenly began to talk of some other, irrelevant subject. So she didn't guess. She just frowned and looked to the north. But she couldn't see anything. Of course not. Li Yunxin knocked on his helmet. It's still outside the atmosphere. This is the planet where the interstellar fleet of that world first landed on the surface. Right now, outside the atmosphere, there are 11 giant motherships docked in the planet's orbit. Super. At the same time, there are nearly 600 landing craft preparing to enter the atmosphere. It's also super. The reason why it's golden is because of the light from the giant mothership's waves. Of course, you won't understand even if I tell you. Li Yunxin sighed and stood up. There are still 12 hours before the landing craft will land. It's a spectacular sight. But if I show you, I don't know if it'll be bad for me. So, he said something in a low voice. The surrounding scenery suddenly disappeared, and the secret room returned to its original appearance. There were no decorations, no tables or chairs. The dome, the walls, and the floor were all white. Only many words and thin lines appeared on the snow-white walls. Shinryu didn't know what those things were for, but she realized one thing. Li Yunxin didn't make no progress these days. So I won't show you. The heavy clothes on Li Yunxin also disappeared. He looked at Shinryu seriously. I didn't create this desert because I wanted to escape, or because I was in a bad mood. Or let's put it this way. In your eyes, that space just now was a desert, a place to escape. But here, what I see is exuberant vitality and hope. Humanity's new home. After 10 hours, you'll see the colony ship landing. After 10 days, a huge city will appear. When I saw this and heard what you said, I suddenly felt very emotional. Li Yunxin sighed softly. I do have a sense of confinement. But seeing this scene, I realized that here, on this planet, the great demons and cultivators are said to be omnipotent. But what can they actually do? In the end, they can't escape the shackles of this planet. You came to me and told me a bunch of people's hearts and schemes. You said their schemes are so and so. In the end, it's still the fight between people. But in another place a long time ago, there was another group of people whose world was already a brilliant sea of stars. They may also be fighting, but not only with people, but also with the sky, with the entire vast universe, extremely harsh and strange universe environment. The scene I saw just now was just like that. Only with great ambition and sacrifice can the sun and moon change the sky. Li Yunqin sighed helplessly. That's why I suddenly felt a little annoyed. Just now, I felt that I had just experienced a little sense of expansion and sublimation. And then you came to me and said a bunch of nonsense to pull me back here. It's very boring. The biggest contradiction between us is actually not some power struggle. It's the contradiction between your group's growing demand for low-end goals in this world and my increasingly broadened vision. At this point he paused for a moment. Shinryu's face was solemn. What do you want to say? That is, I don't want to continue playing with you. Li Yunqin raised his hand and pointed to the wall. These days I have broken through the 6th level of control command, and soon I will get what I want. If everything goes well, things will be done in 3 days. Even if there are some twists and turns, it will not take more than 5 days. Divine Lord, can you settle things on your side in 3 to 5 days? If you can't, don't blame me for coming out of this room. Shinryu stared at him for a while. You're an alarmist. It's up to you to believe it or not. Because you know that Lu Gongzan is coming here, so you're being an alarmist. You want us to be afraid and delay for a few days. Lu Gongzan? Li Yunqin smiled. I'm not worried about him at all. He's a person with good luck, good judgment, and a brain. If they really heard some rumors about me and made a stupid decision to come here, there were only 2 possibilities. 1, he is not Lu Gongzan. 2, he is playing with you. To be honest, your IQ is not only not enough to fight with me, but also not enough to fight with him. Shinryu was about to speak, but Li Yunqin immediately interrupted her. You don't believe me? Then let me ask you. Have they caught him yet? Have they found him yet? The lifeless immortal sect is so powerful. Could it be that they can't even find a Lu Gongzan who is rushing to the East Sea? If that's the case, Divine Lord, I'll give you 2 possibilities. Li Yunqin revealed an evil smile. One possibility is that your IQ is low, and you've really been played by him. The other possibility is that your IQ is low, and you've been played by the lifeless immortal sect. If the lifeless immortal sect can cooperate with you to sell me out, why can't they really cooperate with me to sell you out? Actually, their people have long been together. The people from the lifeless immortal sect found a reason to fool you, and then went to inform old Lu. Tell me which one is the truth. Shinryu was stunned for a moment, and her face changed. Chapter 741. Li Yunqin shook his head sympathetically. Looking at your expression, did someone from the lifeless immortal sect really go to contact Lu Gongzan? Shinryu took a deep breath and calmed herself down. It's useless to talk to you. Your ability to confuse the mind is one of the best in the world. Her face didn't look good, and her voice was very low. You said that you will succeed in 3 days, or 5 days at most. What a coincidence. If I want to succeed, I also need these days. Then let's take a look. Let's see who will die. Shinryu's tone was stern, but she couldn't help but glance at the wall a few times. When I succeed, no matter what conspiracy you have, it will be in vain. After saying these words, as if she was afraid that Li Yunqin would say something annoying again, Shinryu's figure flickered slightly and soon disappeared. The expression on Li Yunqin's face didn't change, as if the arrival of Shinryu was just a breeze visiting. He reached out and pointed a few times on the wall, and the surrounding environment returned to the previous desolate and lonely planet. At the stormy waves in Donghai town, Lu Gongzan met with several messengers. Like the previous old painter, they brought the same news. Someone was actively trying to contact him, intending to meet him. After thinking for a whole day, Lu Gongzan went out the next day. It was noon, the sun was hanging high, but it wasn't hot enough. He had sent some messages through his own channels, asking the other party to meet at the beach near Whitewater Town. But he instinctively felt that things shouldn't be so simple, and there should be many twists and turns. So when he went out, he prepared for safety, planning to deal with any accidents. The appointed place was next to a reef, It was difficult for large ships to sail in, and it was dangerous for small ships to sail nearby, because less than a meter of water was full of sharp blade-like reef everywhere. So it was named Knife Beach. He stood on a reef on the shore and waited for about a quarter of an hour, but still didn't see anyone. The waves washed against the reef, making a monotonous background sound. The seawater under the reef was very clean, like flowing glass. Lu Gongzan made a hand seal and waited for a while. He couldn't help but wonder how Li Yunqin would deal with such a situation if he were here. He believed that he was part of Brother Xian's plan, even though they hadn't had the chance to contact each other since they parted ways. But what he had done on land these days was also inextricably linked to Li Yunqin. Li Yunqin had expected that after the destruction of the Taoist sect of wonders, great demons from all over the world would come into being. He had also expected the current chaos in the world. When he went to Chengdu, he casually made a few idle moves and helped Prince Rong. Now Prince Rong, no, Emperor Rong Yingjuren, had already become a powerful figure with his help. He established the Second Saint Church, hoping that more and more people's power of will would be of help to what his brother Xian was doing. In a sense, they were still in contact through this method. But when he did those things, such as subduing the Black Knife and going to Chengdu, was it intentional or unintentional? If it was unintentional, then he was really lucky. Now someone wanted to see him. Lu Gongzan felt that if Brother Xian could predict the current situation of the world, he should also be able to predict the contact between him and the other party. So, what role did he want him to play? What should he do? But as soon as he thought of this, Lu Gongzan understood. Li Yunqin was not a person who easily trusted others. Since he trusted him so much, it meant that he was very confident in his vision, ideas, and ability to adapt. Since that was the case, maybe he could help him if he acted according to his own ideas. He thought about these things and looked up at the sea a few times, but still saw nothing. So he looked down at the water beside the reef. After looking for a few more times, he suddenly sighed and shook his head. I am proud that I am already in the realm of profound mastery, and have received the teachings of Dragon King. My cultivation is not the best in the world, but it is still rare. I didn't expect that I couldn't see through you. It seems that the people from the lifeless immortal sect in the sea are really clever. He said while slightly frowning. Sir, show yourself. Suddenly, there was a ripple on the water surface. The surrounding scenery darkened and then brightened. However, Lu Gongzan could already sense that a certain barrier had been activated. He and the nearby sea and sky were wrapped inside. A figure rose from the shallow water beside the reef under his feet, and condensed into a figure. The person who came was also wearing a Taoist robe. He was carried by the wave, and jumped onto the reef. He was only 2 or 3 steps away from Lu Gongzan. Lu Gongzan's face was like water, but the person smiled and bowed. Tong Tian Dragon King, please don't blame me. I had no choice. When I meet with Dragon King, there are some things that can't be heard by others. So I set up a restriction to let Dragon King have a look first. If Dragon King can't see through it immediately, it means that this restriction can be used. He bowed again. I am Qin Fengzi, a necromancer from the lifeless immortal sect. Lu Gongzan was slightly startled. He realized that the person who came was different from what he thought. He had heard some things about the sea monsters from Lu Baishui at the Stormy Waves Inn, and had seen many land monsters. So in his opinion, even if the demons learned the ways of humans, there were still many differences. The tyrannical nature in their hearts was always different from that of humans. But looking at the person in front of him, the way he talked and acted was no different from humans, and his attitude was also very kind. It was strange. But the more it was so, the more he felt that something was wrong, and he became even more vigilant. So he looked at Qin Fengzi and said in a deep voice, You are looking for me. Yes. Qin Fengzi also looked at him. I came here to tell Tongtian Dragon King something. Li Yunqin was tricked by the 10,000-year ancestor, and is now trapped on Dragon Island. Long De Qin Jun was also tricked by Shinryu, and is also trapped there. Shinryu is using a secret technique to refine Qin Jun. Once it succeeds, he can return to Taishang. Lu Gongzan raised his hand and interrupted him. What do you mean? Qin Fengzi was startled. What does Dragon King mean? You are from the lifeless immortal sect. You came to see me, but immediately told me. If what you said is true, what do you want to do? If not, and you want to lie to me, I will see through you. Lu Gongzan frowned. If you say you want to be honest, the tempo is a bit too fast. Tempo. Qin Fengzi repeated these two words, then sighed. All right, I was rude. But I have been with Li Yunxin for a few days. I thought that the Lu Gongzan that he admires would have the same temperament as him, and it would be easier to talk to him. I didn't expect you to be wary. Hearing this, Lu Gongzan's expression softened. He smiled. There is no one else in the world who has the same temperament as Li Yunxin. But for you to say this, it means that you have interacted with him before. I have heard about what happened on the sea. I want to hear it from you, so that I can make a better judgment. Qin Fengzi knew what he meant, and told him everything he had seen and heard in the past few days. What Lu Gongzan knew was gathered from various sources. It was inevitable that there would be a lot of rumors, some of which were even slightly exaggerated. Now that he heard Qin Fengzi tell the whole story, he finally understood how exciting the scene was. From Qin Fengzi's words, he had also heard many details about Li Yunxin that no one else could fabricate. So his heart slowly calmed down. Now that he looked at Qin Fengzi again, he felt that something was different. This siren was also interesting. It was as if he yearned for Li Yunxin's heroic spirit and quick-wittedness, so he had a good impression of this enemy. Lu Gongzan laughed in his heart. He only saw the heroic side of Li Yunxin, but he didn't see the other side. If he did, he wouldn't feel that Li Yunxin's current situation is extremely dangerous. Qin Fengzi told him everything, then said, Does Dragon King believe me now? Lu Gongzan thought for a moment. You don't need to call me Dragon King. In this world, there is only one person worthy of the name Dragon King. You can call me Mr. Lu. After listening to what you said, I can confirm that you have some relationship with Dragon King. But there is another question that I have to ask. The same old question. No matter how much you admire Dragon King, you are still a member of the lifeless immortal sect. Why are you on our side? Qin Fengzi sighed. Speaking of this, I have to talk about another matter. It is also what I am worried about being heard by others. After saying that, he made a few more hand seals. Light flashed around them. The seals seemed to have become stronger. After doing all this, he lowered his voice. What I said to you just now was what the lifeless immortal sect wanted me to say. What I want to tell you now is what I want to tell you. Li Yunxin is currently on Dragon Island. He found a way to protect himself. The ancestor can't do anything to him. The Shinryu can't do anything to him. So they decided to lure him out. That's why you heard a lot of news. That he is in trouble, in danger. We released this news to lure some people into our trap. Our main target is you. Once you fall into our hands, we can use it to threaten Li Yunxin. We believe that Li Yunxin will change his original plan because of your life. You are the bait. Lu Gongzan thought for a while. Then according to the original plan, you were the one who said those words to me. I feel that you are indeed an anomaly. Did you really leak information to me just to lure me into a trap? Yes. Since you are on good terms with Li Yunxin, that way of speaking should be very effective. Lu Gongzan laughed. You think too highly of me. I am just an ordinary person. Then, what are you going to say next? What I am going to say next is something related to the lifeless immortal sect. But let's put it aside for now. Qin Fengzi hesitated. Can I ask a question that I want to ask? Chapter 742. Lu Gongzan smiled. Go ahead. Why do you follow Li Yunxin so wholeheartedly? Qin Fengzi frowned slightly. To be honest, I have interacted with him for some time now. I've been with him for a few days. And he can indeed be called an ambitious and ruthless person. But this kind of person, you may admire him from afar. But once you become his follower, your days may not be good. What is your purpose in following him? Longevity, or the pursuit of Tao and techniques? Lu Gongzan looked at him in surprise. He didn't expect this kind of question. But after thinking for a while he still said, I can answer your question. But there is one thing. If after this conversation, before you leave, I feel that you are not a trustworthy person, I will kill you and not let you leak this information to others. Can you accept this kind of risk? Qin Fengzi answered without hesitation. Yes. Lu Gongzan didn't say anything else. Then I can tell you. When I first followed him, it was indeed for longevity Daoan techniques. These things are very practical, no one can refuse. For example, when you joined the lifeless immortal sect to learn and cultivate, it must have been for these things. Just like a person who is about to die of hunger or thirst. What he wants is only to fill his stomach. But later on, like now, I have some cultivation. I can go anywhere in the world. But I still don't have any other thoughts. It is because of that person. Qin Fengzi frowned. Person? He. Lu Gongzan smiled. Don't misunderstand. Li Yinxin is not a perfect saint. Even when it comes to things like a person's conscience, he might be even worse than me. But at least from a certain point of view, he is a person who looks the same inside and out. Qin Fengzi's frown deepened. He felt that what Lu Gongzan said and what he knew were two completely different people. When he was with Li Yunxin, it was very difficult to judge which words were true and which were false. But now Lu Gongzan said that he was the same as he appeared. Lu Gongzan seemed to see through his doubts and smiled again. For example, after the Battle of Cloud Mountain, I asked him why the celestial sect was destroyed. Because at that time, I knew that it would be an era of suffering for the people. Evil creatures would rise up in the world, and the Midland would be flooded with blood. Although I don't have the heart to worry about the world, if I was one of the main culprits who caused that kind of situation, I wouldn't feel good about it. It was snowing. He told me that he did all those things for the sake of all human beings in the world. He said that the celestial sect of wonders has controlled the human world for tens of thousands of years and raised humans like livestock. Although it was comfortable, it was like raising livestock. It wasn't a good thing. If he was trapped for too long, he wouldn't be able to fly or run. Slowly they would perish in the end. He had thrown the world into chaos in order to teach people how to be their own masters in the midst of blood and fire. Only then would things get better and better. This is called no construction without destruction. Qin Fengzi exclaimed out in shock. Does he really have the heart to do that? Lu Gongzan laughed and said, when he said those words, I thought it was true. But later, I found out that it wasn't true. He just didn't want me to feel guilty. Or in other words, he said those words to make me feel better. So you said that he was as honest as he appeared? Because I think in order to see how a person is, apart from listening to what he said, what's more important is what he did. Lu Gongzan sighed slightly. What he said about the celestial sect of wonders was true. I agree with him. It's also true that he destroyed the celestial sect of wonders, and that was his action. Although his purpose might not be that, and it might even be something that he did conveniently to achieve his real purpose, the fact is right there. There is no celestial sect of wonders in the world, but there are still evil creatures. There are evil creatures, and human beings have to suffer as well. Therefore, he went to the Dragon Island and killed the leader of all evil creatures in the world. No matter what he was going to do in Shinryu, once he succeeded, the power of the evil creatures would be greatly reduced. He also left some people in Midland. I helped Emperor Rome conquer cities and territories, not for anything else. It was to build the kind of paradise that he said. This is what I meant by as honest as he appeared. He did almost everything that he said. In this case, why should I care about his real purpose? He didn't care about anything in this world. What he was after was something that I couldn't understand. Another example is a pond that is about to dry up. In the pond, there are many fish that are dying of thirst. At this time, those powerful beings are fighting, and deep ditches have been left on the ground, connecting the pond and the river. The fish in the pond can survive. Do the fish care about whether the real purpose of those powerful beings is to save them or not? Qin Fengzi thought for a while, then shook his head and said, but what's the difference between this and someone who appears to be different? Haha. Lu Gongzan laughed out loud. Isn't the difference obvious? Someone who appears to be different, saying that he wants to benefit the people of the world. But more often than not, he acts like an ancestor and enslaves everyone. But when he does things, he will at least consider something else. If he can do it conveniently, he will do it conveniently. This kind of heart is the rarest. Now he can compete with Shinryu and the Rock King. But had he ever asked for anything from this world? Had he ever asked for anything? Not at all. Because he doesn't care about the world. But because he doesn't care, he is the greatest blessing in the world. After saying this, Lu Gongzan looked at Qin Fengzi and pondered. After a while he said, "You asked me why I followed him. You probably have some unanswered questions in your heart. Since I am being honest with you, you can also tell me, what did the headmaster of your lifeless immortal sect do to make you disappointed?" Qin Fengzi was shocked. "You know, I guessed it when you asked me why I followed Li Yunxin." Lu Gongzan smiled. "Otherwise, what reason do you have to say those things to me?" AI. Qin Fengzi sighed. "I do have this question. Mr. Lu, do you know that the headmaster of my lifeless immortal sect was originally from the Lan Xian sect? This is the first time I've heard of this. He was originally a cultivator from the land." Qin Fengzi sighed again. Later on, he went to the sea and established the lifeless immortal sect, which has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. The ancestor has always warned us that the Lan Xian sect cultivates the evil path, while we cultivate the righteous path. We accumulate our forces in the sea and build up our strength, so that one day, we can attack the land and promote the orthodox Xian sect. After I entered the sect, I have always treated this as my duty. But gradually many people and I started to have doubts about one thing. Qin Fengzi hesitated and said in a low voice, "The immortal sect has set up a large array in the vast sea and small arrays everywhere. When demons die in the sea, their souls are absorbed by the small arrays and refined into the large array. And in that large array, an ancient devil from the netherworld is sealed." Lu Gongzan thought for a while. "The problem lies with the ancient devil?" "Yes. The ancestor said that we could have attacked the land a long time ago. But the reason why we didn't do so was because of the ancient devil. Once the ancient devil awakens, it will bring a great calamity to the world. For the sake of the world, we must first refine and suppress the ancient devil." However, more and more people realized that the ancient devil wasn't that important. The large array in the vast sea didn't seem to want to suppress and refine the ancient devil into nothingness. But as time passed, the ancient devil became stronger and stronger. And recently, the ancestor sent some of us who had doubts to die. We secretly guessed that the ancestor refined the ancient devil. He hesitated for a while and seemed to spend a lot of courage before saying, "For his own use." Lu Gongzan smiled. "I understand. Your ancestor's words are always dignified, saying that it's for the sake of the world. You were influenced by what you saw and heard and almost believed it. But in the end, it's for his own benefit. That's why you suspect that there's more to it than meets the eye." Qin Fengzi was about to speak, but Lu Gongzan smiled. "So the ancestor is different from Li Yunxin. He rarely said such things when he was doing things. Instead, it makes people think that he's doing it for his own benefit. But in the end, he will give others a lot of benefits. But because of that, you put your hopes on Li Yunxin? It doesn't make sense." "I didn't put my hopes on him. I just wanted to change. I'm just a pawn. I came here to take a look." Qin Fengzi looked at Lu Gongzan. "To see what kind of people are around Li Yunxin, and to think about what kind of person Li Yunxin is." "I understand." Lu Gongzan thought for a while. "I've seen the ancient devil under the cloud mountain. It's a scary thing. To the demons, it might be even scarier. Because I've seen it suck the souls of demons, but it has no interest in humans. Your ancestor was originally a human, but you are demons. Thinking about this, you can kill people. Why did he only recruit demons as his disciples in the sea? But if you think about it again, your ancestor refining the ancient devil for his own benefit isn't the scariest thing. If he and Brother Exine, Li Yunxin are the same kind of people, then when he does this, he can really fulfill his initial promise to you. And it can be considered to be the same inside and out to a certain extent. But the scariest thing is that he isn't. He doesn't care about the world, he only cares about himself. He refined the ancient devil for his own use, but he won't revive the profound gate. He'll even use you for his own use. You and the others in the gate only have doubts in your heart. You don't know what your ancestor will do, and what you should do, so you can only try to find a way out and test me. Lu Gongzan sighed sympathetically. This situation is the most dangerous. Then I can't help you right now, nor can I help you. Lu Gongzan smiled and shook his head. You have to save yourselves. Or rather, you have to make a big gamble. Chapter 743. Gamble? Qin Fengzi frowned. Gamble on what? Let's take a gamble, and see if someone else will come to help you or answer your questions. Qin Fengzi was startled. He didn't know if Lu Gongzan's words had any deeper meaning. He said that he couldn't help them, but he wanted them to gamble. What was he hinting at? While Qin Fengzi was startled, Lu Gongzan was thinking about this person. Before the meeting, Lu Gongzan thought that the conversation would be extremely difficult. He didn't expect the honesty of this person to be out of his expectations. Almost from the moment they met, he confessed everything. Now that he heard something else, Lu Gongzan gradually had an impression of Qin Fengzi. And because of this impression, he felt that this person was interesting. No wonder Li Yunxin didn't kill him. When he and Li Yunxin drank under the moon and chatted, Li Yunxin would occasionally mention things from his world. He said that in his world, there was a certain type of people that everyone called idiots. These idiots didn't mean that they lacked intelligence. On the contrary, most of them belonged to the group with high intelligence in that world. And the reason why others thought they were idiots was because they didn't understand the ways of the world and were too idealistic. To put it nicely, they were simple. This was something Lu Gongzan mentioned when they were talking about the crazy people in the world. Li Yunxin continued and said that there were similar people in his world. He had even thought about it briefly before. From what he saw, when people lived in groups, they mostly followed the law of the jungle. They lacked morality and followed the law of the jungle. Because of this, a set of rules in society was developed. This kind of social rules was suitable for social life, and the core idea was self-interest and the law of the jungle. The deceit, flattery, disregard of rules, even murder and robbery, corruption and corruption seen in the world, were almost all caused by that set of social rules. But as people became more and more civilized, and society became more and more civilized, another set of rules was born from this set of social rules. It could be called the law of morality. Along with the law of morality, more and more advanced civilizations also appeared. Therefore, a small part of the elite groups began to receive this kind of education about morality and civilization. The scholars in the Midland, the scholars in Li Yunxin's world, received exactly this kind of education. This kind of moral law that emerged from the mud of the social law was essentially an ideal state that had yet to be realized. Many people, young people or children, received this kind of education without being exposed to enough of the social rules. The very idea of this education was to make men better and better, to replace the laws of society, and to achieve an ideal state. However, after being instilled with this set of rules, many people really formed a set of moral values based on books or beliefs in their hearts. When they came to society, they found that the moral values they had been educated to establish were essentially in conflict with some social laws and social life. The students read the books of the sages and understood the thoughts of the sages. They felt that people should be upright and outspoken, and hate evil, as if it were their own enemies. In a sense, this kind of civilized education was very successful. But when he entered society, he found that he had no choice but to compromise, to save the country in a roundabout way, and to tolerate. Some people felt that there was a huge conflict between their ideals and reality, and they felt pain because of this. Therefore, the saying, "It's rare to be stupid," came into being. Some people compromised, abandoned the law of morality, and completely accepted the laws of society. Some people recognized the reality, and while sticking to their own moral values, they had no choice but to do things according to the laws of society. These two kinds of people might not have a good life, but at least they wouldn't have a bad life. However, there was another kind of people who stuck to the moral values in their hearts and refused to accept or compromise with another kind of law. This kind of people became what people called idiots. Perhaps it was because changing and accepting was an extremely painful thing, so they didn't want to do it. In fact, this was also a kind of cowardice and avoidance, Or perhaps it was because they were too stubborn to their beliefs and were willing to use their whole lives to fulfill their beliefs. These people could be called warriors or ideal martyrs. And this Qin Fengzi was actually a bit like that kind of idiot. Although he was a demon, he wasn't a child. And in the lifeless immortal sect, there were many classes and relationships. But in those sects that mainly focused on cultivation, the environment was relatively simple. It was similar to a very large academy, or what Li Yunxin called a school. In that kind of environment, he was instilled with some kind of great, bright, and correct belief for a long time, and gradually, he became a firm believer in it. From this point, it could be said that the 10,000-year-old ancestor's education was very successful. But because of this success, when Qin Fengzi found out that reality and his beliefs greatly conflicted, he became quite conflicted and painful. The intense emotions brought about by this conflict could even make him disloyal to the immortal sect, and he tried to seek answers from a stranger, an unfamiliar power. Lu Gongzan could understand this kind of pain. A person's thoughts were the most mysterious thing. When a person didn't want to do something, there was no power that could make him do it. Even if he used a sacred art, it was essentially to make him willing to do it. Even if this willing was fake at the time. How many people like Qin Fengzi were there in the lifeless immortal sect? The 10,000-year-old ancestor had been operating in the ocean for tens of thousands of years. He shouldn't have never thought of this kind of situation. Then the speculation that he had made before might indeed be true. When Lu Gongzan thought of this, his expression suddenly changed. But it wasn't because of Qin Fengzi, but because of the sound of a zither. The sound of a zither, lingering in the air, came from an unknown place. The two of them were talking on a reef by the sea. Although the sea was relatively calm, there were still the sounds of waves. The sound of waves could cover up the voices of ordinary people. And because the two of them were cultivators, they could hear each other's words clearly. But now, the sound of the zither seemed to directly enter their minds. It was even clearer than the two of them talking. Qin Fengzi's expression changed. Obviously he also heard this sound. Just as he was about to speak, Lu Gongzan waved his hand and struck towards the west, shouting, "Who is it? Sneaky!" The palm strike from the mysterious realm directly tore apart the restriction set by Qin Fengzi, and with a wung sound, it pierced through the air, causing the air to let out a terrifying screech. But the power of the palm suddenly dissipated 3 feet away. There was no loud sound, no strange phenomenon. Like a clay ox disappearing into the sea, it disappeared without a sound. Just as Lu Gongzan was about to fly over and attack again, a figure slowly appeared in the air. If it was any ordinary person, Lu Gongzan wouldn't have held back. He had to first fight a few times, figure out the situation, and capture him. But when he saw this figure, he was stunned, because the person who came was actually an extremely beautiful woman, standing on a small white jade boat. Judging from how she had easily neutralized his attack just now, this woman's cultivation was one of the highest in the current world. There were many strong cultivators in the world, but there weren't many such beautiful female cultivators. A few names flashed through Lu Gongzan's mind, and he quickly caught one. So he slowly retracted his hand, looked at the woman and smiled. "I was wondering who it was. So it's the owner of Southernwood Residence." The woman smiled. "You actually recognized me. I knew you would come, but I didn't expect you to come so quickly." As Lu Gongzan said this, he turned to look at Qin Fengzi. "Just now, I said that we would have a bet, that there would be someone who would clear up your doubts. Look, that person is here." Qin Fengzi frowned, showing a suspicious expression, and his words seemed to have surprised Taoist Qing Shui. "You knew I would come?" She shook her head slightly. "You have received the teachings of Li Yunxin. Your ability to deliberately mystify things is comparable to his." Lu Gongzan didn't care. "Please come forward. I am not deliberately mystifying things. The owner of Southernwood Residence is well informed. You should know that I used the name of Li Yunxin to create a nondescript painting path in the world. Many of them are my messengers, but most of them are lowly Taoist priests. But I also know that Southernwood Residence has been operating in the mortal world for a long time. Many of the people in my painting path should be people of Southernwood Residence. Every piece of information I received should have been seen by the owner of Southernwood Residence. How could the owner of Southernwood Residence not know that this friend of mine asked me to meet here? He smiled again. Since I can receive this information, it means that you are happy to see the current situation, and you are more likely to stand on our side. So I told him that there would be someone to clear up his doubts. Sir, tell me, am I right? After a moment of silence, Daoist Qingshui smiled. You have indeed received the teachings of Li Yunxin. After saying this, her figure suddenly appeared on the reef. The three of them were separated by 3 to 4 steps, as if they were in a tripartite formation. The owner of Southernwood Residence should have heard our conversation just now, Lu Gongzan said. Then please tell this friend, how should they solve their current predicament? Daoist Qingshui smiled. His confusion is because he knows too little. There is nothing difficult in the world. What is difficult is just not understanding it clearly enough. Since you have guessed my intention, then let's cut to the chase. I can also be considered to have contributed, so let's talk about some things. These words were said to Lu Gongzan. Then he turned to Qin Fengzi. Do you know the origin of your 10,000-year-old ancestor? Previously, when facing Lu Gongzan, Qin Fengzi was still considered calm. But now that there seemed to be a woman who was stronger than Lu Gongzan, and an extremely beautiful woman, Qin Fengzi felt slightly uneasy. He thought for a moment before answering carefully. The ancestor came from the profound sect of the land, and was later chased by 2 demons. Daoist Qingshui interrupted him. Do you know why he was chased? Qin Fengzi was stunned again. It was because the 2 demons cultivated the evil tome, and the ancestor and the people of Cloud Mountain. Chapter 744. Daoist Qingshui smiled and shook her head. Looks like you really don't know the truth. Then let me tell you. What you lifeless immortal sect people are currently cultivating is the evil tome that your 10,000-year-old ancestor spoke of. This caused Qin Fengzi's eyes to widen as he exclaimed, What? Those 2 demons were originally your 10,000-year-old ancestor's juniors. Your ancestor told you that they were cultivating the evil tome, and he told Xian sect about it. That's why they hated him and wanted to kill him. But in reality, he saw that the 2 juniors were cultivating the evil tome, and their cultivation increased by leaps and bounds. So he couldn't help but beg them. The 2 of them were from the same sect and really taught him. After he cultivated it, he realized that it was actually a treasure tome and wanted to keep it for himself. That's why he called them demons and asked Xian sect to go all out to kill them. I didn't expect the 2 of them to hold back when they taught him the technique. Only when they really fought did he realize how strong the 2 of them were. He went from being surrounded and hunted to being surrounded and hunted. After that, the fact that he was also cultivating the evil tome was exposed in Cloud Mountain, and the people of Cloud Mountain didn't want him anymore. So he had no choice but to escape to the sea, and that's how your lifeless immortal sect came to be. Daoist Qingshui smiled again. Otherwise, why do you think he has such a deep hatred for Xian sect on land, and wants to get rid of them? Qin Fengzi, who was already at a loss because of the conflict of ideas in his mind, became even more at a loss after hearing this explosive inside story. How could it be? Don't be shocked. There's another thing. But your guess on this matter is also correct. The ancient demon that was refined in the vast sea formation was indeed something that your ancestor wanted to use for himself. After refining it, he will possess it, because only in the weak water can he ensure that his body won't be destroyed. Once he leaves the weak water, he will die. But he still wants to go to the land and become an ancestor. What should he do? Naturally, he wants to get his hands on the ancient demon. The step of refining the ancient demon's consciousness and instincts was completed a long time ago. What you have done all these years, it was to make the ancient demon stronger. When the time is right, your ancestor will possess it and become one with the ancient demon. At that time, almost no one in the world would be able to go against him. As for you guys, don't you know that those cultivators in Midland hate demons the most? Don't tell me you don't know that the souls of demons, especially the souls of demons with high cultivation bases, are great supplements for the ancient devil's body? Lu Gongzan mentioned this to you before. Now let me tell you, his conjecture is correct. Qin Fengzi was dumbstruck, his teeth chattering loudly. After a long time he finally said, "How could this be? Why not?" The Clearwater Taoist looked at him sympathetically. Her eyes wandered. "It's you guys who haven't thought of this yet. How could it be? You. Since you knew about it, and you said that the old ancestor would be invincible, why didn't you? Why not?" Taoist Qingshui shook his head. How can things in the world be so simple? It wasn't a brawl between barbarians. The various forces were intertwined, and a slight move in one part could affect the whole. In the past, your lifeless immortal sect formed an alliance with the Dragon King of the Nine Seas and Shinryu, and lived in seclusion on the sea. The Shinryu also had 9 dragon sons on land to control the Celestial Sect. The Celestial Sect was secretly controlled by the Freemasonry. The Freemasonry was also the enemy of Mu Nanju. In such a situation, whoever made a move would become the target of everyone. We had to wait until the world was out of balance and chaos to find an opportunity. We waited for thousands of years, and finally, the person who had the ability to stir up the world appeared. She said this while looking at Lu Gongzan. It's Li Yunxin. That's why I'm willing to ask you to meet him. I'm also willing to help you save Li Yunxin. Once Li Yunxin gets out, the old ancestor will lose the help of Shinryu. Now that he's one of the top figures in the world, the old ancestor might not be able to win against him. From what she said, it seemed like she was doing it for the sake of the people, and had no selfish motives. But Lu Gongzan was aware of the relationship between Li Yunxin and Mu Nanju. Naturally, he wouldn't have such an illusion, and he wouldn't ask, "Then what do you want?" He wasn't an idiot like Qin Fengzi. He only said, "Then what do you think they should do next?" Qin Fengzi, who was at a loss, seemed to be completely at the mercy of the two. Taoist Qingshui said softly, "Although the old ancestor has ulterior motives, I see that your friend is a pure and kind person. It's very difficult for such a person to raise his sword against his fellow sect members and teachers. But everyone knows the principle of self-preservation. Doing other things for self-preservation isn't considered a loss of morality." She turned to look at Qin Fengzi. "The old ancestor taught you, and gave you a new lease of life. But the two of us are outsiders to you. Listening to the words of two outsiders, and blindly following them without seeking proof, is a disgrace to the sect. I have a compromise here. Do you want to hear it?" Taoist Qingshui used her identity as the owner of Mu Nanju to ask for his opinion softly, and to think from his point of view, it was indeed flattering. Now that things had come to this, Qin Fengzi had no reason to refuse. He said softly, "I'm willing to listen to your advice. Bring us to the ocean." Taoist Qingshui said, "I have a way for you to not be noticed. Once we're on the ocean, we'll observe the changes. Lu Gongzan, and I want to save Li Yunxin. So we won't start a fight with the lifeless immortal sect. When Li Yunxin escapes, if the old ancestor really does something that doesn't match his words, we'll hold him back. At that time, you people from the Celestial Sect will see his true colors, and you won't just sit and wait for death. With this we can turn the tide, and not let things develop in the worst direction." Qin Fengzi's face turned pale, and he thought for a long time. Taoist Qingshui's words sounded very reasonable, but in reality, he was inviting a wolf into the house. After a long time he said, "But there's still Shinryu. I'm going for Shinryu." Taoist Qingshui's words were very direct. "I have a personal grudge with Shinryu. I must get rid of her. If your lifeless immortal sect is fine, you can sit and watch me fight with Shinryu. You've been operating on the ocean for many years, so you don't have to worry about anything. So I need this time. Shinryu is being held back by Li Yunxin, and the lifeless immortal sect's old ancestor is busy with his own matters. Only then can I use this opportunity to go to the ocean to solve my problem. If it was any other time, this would definitely not be possible. But if it's like this..." She looked at Qin Fengzi and didn't speak. Lu Gongzan finished for her. "If it's like this, if we're wrong about your old ancestor, you'll be the sinner of the Celestial Sect. Are you willing to take this risk?" "I can't make the decision," Qin Fengzi said softly. "I still need." "Then go back and ask someone who can make the decision," Taoist Qingshui said. After she said that, she and Lu Gongzan didn't say anything else. Qin Fengzi knew that these two experts have said everything they need to say, so he could only bid farewell and leave. The development of the situation was out of his expectations. When he spoke to Taoist Zai in Punglai Island, he understood that he was sent to test Lu Gongzan's intentions, and at the same time, to warn Lu Gongzan not to fall into the trap easily. Then, they would be able to take the initiative and see if they should help Li Yunqin or continue to trust the old ancestor and work for the celestial sect. Unexpectedly, Lu Gongzan's cultivation was far above his. Not long after, he was captured by the other party. Then came the owner of Southernwood Jew. Lifeless Immortal Sect had informants on land, so he naturally knew what kind of person the owner of Southernwood Jew was. This was also the first time he saw the owner's face. At this time, he didn't even have the slightest bit of confidence. It turned out that from the beginning, Lu Gongzan didn't have the possibility of falling into the trap, and seemed to have reached some kind of tacit understanding with the owner of Southernwood Jew. He was at his wit's end, and could only return to Punglai Island to listen to what Taoist Zai had to say. After Qin Fengzi's figure slowly disappeared, Taoist Qingshui looked at Lu Gongzan and said softly, "When you were in Rong Kingdom, you killed all the people of Southernwood Jew who were close to Emperor Rong." Lu Gongzan shook his head. "I just sent them out. Not a single life was harmed. This method of destroying the bridge, after crossing the river, is passed down from Li Yunqin. You are exaggerating. We are just using each other. Brother Xan's biological father is with you, and he's also using him." "You mean Li Chunfeng?" Taoist Qingshui thought for a while. "Like father, like son." "Oh." Lu Gongzan laughed. "Isn't Li Chunfeng your right-hand man?" Whenever Brother Xan mentioned this, he would always feel indignant. "Humph. He is already hiding somewhere." Taoist Qingshui frowned slightly. "He is no longer a member of Southernwood Jew. I didn't expect the person beside me to have ulterior motives." Lu Gongzan was startled, but somehow, he was a little happy, even though he didn't know the inside story. But he felt that this at least meant, was Li Chunfeng different from what Brother Xan had guessed? This might be a good thing. For Brother Xan, he didn't mention this matter anymore. He said calmly, "What will you do next?" "It's simple. We will go to Punglai with Qin Fengzi, then go to Dragon Island from Punglai." Taoist Qingshui said seriously, "Li Yunqin is very capable. He just needs an opportunity to turn the situation around. We will go and turn the situation around, and he will be able to escape. Once he escapes, he will first deal with Shinryu. You should know that I have no ill intentions towards him. All the misunderstandings in the past are because he is too scheming and doesn't trust others easily. But at that time, he will understand my sincerity. We will work together to deal with Shinryu, and then I can leave. I will not interfere with the rest of the matter." "Your words seem to be too certain." Lu Gongzan frowned. "What if the person behind Qin Fengzi doesn't allow it?" Taoist Qingshui smiled. "He won't. The person behind Qin Fengzi is Zai Zhenren." She looked at Lu Gongzan. "He is also a member of Southernwood Jew." Chapter 745. After a while, Lu Gongzan smiled and sighed. "Your association is really resourceful. You're everywhere. It's as if the world is filled with your people. But there aren't many who can be used." Taoist Qingshui looked at him. "It's Li Yunqin's good fortune to have you. If you treat people with sincerity, there will naturally be people willing to work for you." Lu Gongzan shook his head slightly. "He and I are just kindred spirits. But the owner of Southernwood Jew is a respected leader. I'm afraid it's difficult to be sincere. No one will believe your sincerity. This isn't your fault." When he said this, he was actually quietly observing the expression of the owner of Southernwood Jew, because he realized something was wrong with the current situation. When Li Yunqin was on land, the owner of Southernwood Jew repeatedly expressed her goodwill to him, but she never showed up. At that time, Lu Gongzan thought that the owner had something difficult to say, like Shinryu, who wanted to maintain a sense of mystery and deterrence, so she didn't show up. But now that he saw her, he knew that her methods were brilliant. Even with his current realm, He couldn't see what kind of magical power she used to counter his palm. This meant that his previous guess was not valid. However, she came to see him. And when they were talking, the owner of Southernwood Ju showed considerable attention and respect to him. Lu Gongzan thought that he could rule out the possibility that the owner wanted to rope him in and use him. Because everyone knew about his friendship with Li Yunxin, it was impossible for him to turn to someone else. With the owner's vision, it was impossible for her to think of this. Then he could think of another possibility, which was that she wanted to change Li Yunxin's impression of her through him. Brother Xian would take his words to heart. If he could put in a few good words, or even just maintain a neutral attitude during the communication, it would cause a subtle change in Li Yunxin's attitude. But what kind of person was the owner of Southernwood Ju? To her, the emperors of the mortal world were like ants. He had only attained Tao for a little more than a year, and all he had was his cultivation and his close relationship with Li Yunxin. How could someone like her condescend to see him in person? It was just like how Emperor Li treated a craftsman in the marketplace as an equal. This meant that what Li Yunxin was doing now was extremely important to her. Perhaps to her, the matter had reached the most crucial step. There was other evidence for this. She suggested asking Qin Fengzi to take them to Penglai. When he heard this, Lu Gongzan's heart skipped a beat. Even with his current identity, he was not willing to ask a low-level necromancer to take him to Penglai. For an expert, this kind of behavior was really hard to accept. It was just like how a human emperor would find it difficult to disguise himself as a beggar to avoid trouble, unless it was absolutely necessary. The owner of Southwood Lodge, at a crucial moment, had to go to Shinryu because he had no other choice. For what? With Lu Gongzan's current knowledge, he could only guess that it was for power. What else could a powerful existence like her do? She wanted the power of Shinryu? But how? How did she get involved with Shinryu? Wasn't Southwood Lodge's goal always the Freemasonry? Therefore, he used an overly lecturing tone and told her, "This is not your fault." She should have shown obvious displeasure. But the Taoist Qingshui smiled. "You have a point." Then, she looked at Lu Gongzan again. "Compared to Li Chunfeng, you look more like Li Yunxin's father." The Taoist Qingshui's answer was the same as Lu Gongzan's expectation. She was not displeased. Instead, she wanted to close the distance between them. For someone of her status to say something like that, it was almost like flattery. If only Brother Xian was here. He screamed in his heart. He would definitely be able to guess what this woman wanted. But if he had to guess, the only conclusion he could come up with was, this woman had a strong motive. What she said to Qin Fengzi was not fake. She wanted to do something with Shinryu, and her attitude was extremely unfriendly. She could be a temporary ally and help Li Yunxin out of his predicament. She used to think the same way, but Brother Xian rejected her. Now, this idea had to be taken by him. Lu Gongzan thought for a while, and finally said, "We are friends." Then, "How many people do you have in Lifeless Immortal Gate? What can I do?" The Taoist Qingshui smiled. "Not many but enough. We will wait here for Qin Fengzi's news. I'm guessing it won't take a day. Then let's wait together." The two of them stood on the reef, looking at the sea. If they were ordinary people, the atmosphere would be a little awkward. But the two of them were extraordinary people, so they did not care about such things. Since they understood each other's needs, they could actually talk. However, they were only talking about cultivation techniques and divine abilities. The Taoist Qingshui was interested in the dragons, so Lu Gongzan talked about it. Lu Gongzan was interested in how Southernwood House operated, so the Taoist Qingshui also talked about it. In between, she only told Lu Gongzan to be careful and be cautious. When they talked about how to secretly transmit information, Lu Gongzan praised Southernwood House for being everywhere, and their efficiency was shockingly high. The Taoist Qingshui smiled, looked at him and said, "Not everything is clear. Sometimes, even if we spend a lot of effort to pay attention to someone, they can still escape our control. For example, a few days ago, you suddenly disappeared for half a month, and no one knew where you went. I couldn't find out. Where did you go?" Lu Gongzan thought for a while, and said, "I met some of Brother Xian's old friends and took care of them. I didn't want them to be involved in these things, so I didn't say. But there's another matter that I want to hear your opinion on. Please speak. Lu Gongzan looked at her. I heard that the Rock King has appeared, but he hasn't done anything. It's like he's plotting something. What do you think? The Taoist Qingshui shook her head. I'm not sure. The meaning behind this answer was obviously not, I'm not sure. But I don't want to say, or, I don't want to talk about it. Lu Gongzan had some thoughts in his mind. He smiled and didn't ask any more. Qin Fengzi returned to Penglai Island, and immediately went to see the Purple Knight Enlightened. The two of them set up a barrier, and Qin Fengzi told him everything he saw, and waited for the Purple Knight Enlightened's decision. What surprised him was that the Purple Knight Enlightened only considered for less than 15 minutes. Then he said in the spacious main hall, yes. Qin Fengzi was silent for a while, and said in a low voice, but enlightened? If so, we might become the sinners of the sect. The Purple Knight Enlightened smiled. Under what circumstances would we become the sinners of the sect? Under the situation where the ancestor is selfless, and we were worried and wronged him. But at that time, the ancestor is still here, and the other cultivators of the sect are still here. What kind of person could damage the foundation of the immortal sect? At that time, the sect will be unharmed. The ones who will be harmed are us. If that's the case, so what if we are expelled or killed? We are just doing our best for the sect, and took a wrong step. There is no such thing as a perfect solution in this world. To do something that others don't dare to do, we must take risks. Mediocre people don't dare to take risks. Only brave warriors, and those who truly have the sect in their hearts, will take risks like we did. If that's the case, even if we become sinners, we will have a clear conscience. Qin Fengzi wanted to say something, but stopped. He thought about the Purple Knight Enlightened's words, and said in a low voice, but there is another possibility. The fault lies with the ancestor, not the sect. If they lead outsiders into the sea, and even the sect. The Purple Knight Enlightened looked at him for a while. When he saw Qin Fengzi shut his mouth in embarrassment, he sighed. You can have doubts in your heart, and dare to doubt the ancestor's actions. It means you are a courageous person. You have such courage. And now you are worried about the sect. It means you are a person with a big heart. But junior brother, your heart is not big enough. Let me ask you, what has our lifeless immortal sect been pursuing for tens of thousands of years? Apart from immortality, what else is there for us to pursue when we cultivate our divine abilities? Qin Fengzi answered blankly. To return to the continent and rebuild the Celestial Gate. Rebuild the Celestial Gate? For what? For. Qin Fengzi hesitated. He had an answer in his heart. But in his opinion, the answer was too bright. He thought of what he was doing, and what he had done in the past, but he didn't dare to say it. Thus, the Purple Knight Enlightened said it on his behalf. For the common people of the world. After saying this, he paced a few steps in the hall. Even that Li Yunxin said on the continent that he wanted to build a paradise. In that paradise, humans and demons coexist in harmony. Don't tell me we didn't think of this? If we were wrong about the ancestor taught us demons on the sea, and taught us how to be human. Then what was his purpose? Wasn't it also for this matter? Qin Fengzi was stunned. Lu Gongzan also said similar words to him on the reef. He said that Li Yunxin told him that what he was doing was for the future of humans. Now that he heard similar words from the Purple Knight Enlightened, he couldn't help but think, is it because I'm limited by my own realm? My thoughts aren't as lofty as these people? He felt an indescribable sense of shame. The Purple Knight Enlightened said, go. He didn't have anything else to say, and could only bow and leave the hall. Walking to the steps outside the hall, he looked up at the mountains and palaces of Penglai Island, and the distant sea and sky. He sighed, Ancestor, we are only doing this for the Celestial Gate. For the common people. Chapter 746. After Qin Fengzi left, Taoist Zai constructed a formation in the air. The formation emitted a faint light, and a voice came out from it. What is it? The tone was not very polite, and there was a trace of anxiety in it. This was the voice of the 10,000-year ancestor. Although he could not see the other party, Daoist Zai still bowed and said, Ancestor, I have already sent Qin Fengzi to see Lu Gongzan, according to the ancestor's instructions. Lu Gongzan indeed did not come to the ocean, but observed from the coast. Qin Fengzi could not convince him. A voice came after a while. Then forget it. Is there anything else? Daoist Zai immediately said, I taught him some words. I told him to say that he admires Li Yunxin's character, and that he admires him. He told Lu Gongzan that we have a grudge against the ancestor, and that Lu Gongzan took the bait. Now Qin Fengzi went to deliver the message. I think Lu Gongzan will arrive at Prunglai Island as soon as tonight. Should I capture him, or feign civility? You decide. The 10,000-year ancestor said, then went silent for a while. But there is one thing. If Shinryu leaves Dragon Island first, hand Lu Gongzan over to her. Stall her for a few days. If Li Yunxin leaves Dragon Island first, use Lu Gongzan to stall him. I still need 3 to 5 days for the important matter here. Be more attentive there. Yes. Without waiting for Daoist Zai to move, the formation disappeared in the air. He frowned, thought about the 10,000-year ancestor's words again, and sent out a few talismans. Thus night fell on Prunglai Island. When Lord Donghai was still here, Prunglai Island was brightly lit at night. Now that it was controlled by the lifeless immortal sect, there were much fewer demons on the island. Thus the palaces on the peaks were dark, with only a few lights. The hall he was in was not lit, so Daoist Zai hid in the darkness. He met a few people in the darkness, spoke a few words, and then began to wait quietly. Qin Fengzi finally appeared after midnight. Daoist Master Zai immediately walked down the high platform in the main hall, and hurried to the door. Qin Fengzi, of course, knew that this was not meant for him. He turned to the side and said in a low voice, Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. After saying this, he shook his sleeves. 2 figures appeared in the hall. Dowmaster Violet Knight let out a light sigh. Junior brother, you've worked hard. You retreat first, and stand guard outside the hall. Qin Fengzi's face was filled with excitement, but it was not clear in the darkness. He didn't suspect anything. He immediately cupped his hands and walked out. When the heavy doors of the great hall were closed, Daoist Master Zai immediately knelt down and said in a trembling voice, This subordinate is incompetent. This subordinate is willing to die. To let Master suffer such humiliation. Daoist Clearwater's figure slowly appeared. She smiled faintly. You've done well. This was nothing. Get up. Daoist Master Violet Knight slowly stood up and lowered his eyes. But with his supernatural power, even if he couldn't see anything in the darkness, he could still see his surroundings clearly. He could smell Daoist Clearwater's scent, and hear her footsteps that were like a breeze. When she walked to the front, he quickly looked up and lowered his face again. He let out a satisfied sigh from the bottom of his heart. Lu Gongzan saw all of this, but didn't say anything. He took 2 steps to the side, and had a new understanding of the owner of Southernwood residence. Daoist Clearwater walked a few steps in the dark hall, and slowly walked up the high platform. She didn't say anything, as if she was revisiting an old place. After a quarter of an hour, she sighed faintly and said, I'm back. After a while she smiled. The hall on Prunglai Island was built the earliest. It's been 2,000 years. It hasn't changed at all. Daoist Master Zai remained silent. Lu Gongzan was shocked. What was she trying to say with these words? Southernwood residence was said to be the descendant of the art saint, which meant it should have appeared more than 1,000 years ago. Even if the owner of Southernwood residence appeared at that time, she should have lived for about 1,000 years. But now, she was talking about something that happened 2,000 years ago. From her tone, it seemed like she had experienced it and stayed here. He couldn't help but say, You what? Daoist Clearwater glanced at him in the dark. She still had a smile on her face. She seemed to be talking to him, but also to herself. Lu Gongzan, do you know? Now there are 9 seas in this world. There used to be 9 seas in this world. But the 9 seas in the past were much wider than they are now. The Qichuanhai back then was not the size of a fingernail. The Qichuanhai started from the Ruoshui River in the east, and reached the Qichuan of the Midland in the west. Lu Gongzan was slightly stunned. The Qichuan of the Midland? You mean the Qi Chuan of the Li Kingdom? The Qi Chuan of the Li Kingdom was also at the westernmost part of the Li Kingdom. It was the natural border between the Li Kingdom and the Tocharians. Yes. Then, Lu Gongzan said in a low voice, the Li Kingdom, the Qing Kingdom, the Yi Kingdom, the Chen Kingdom, the Donghai Kingdom. Are they all included in the Qi Chuanhai? How could he not understand now? The Qi Chuanhai, mentioned by Taoist Clearwater, didn't refer to a sea area. The Qing Kingdom, more than half of it is included. Then it also includes. Taoist Zai opened his mouth. His voice was solemn, but Lu Gongzan could hear the suppressed and deep excitement in it. Now the so-called 9 seas. My master is the real master of the 9 seas. Lu Gongzan sucked in a breath of cold air. You, who exactly are you? If you are the real master of the 9 seas, why did you let Qin Fengzi bring you here? Taoist Clearwater didn't answer him. He only smiled. I just want you to know that what I told you on the land is true. What I want is my Qi Chuanhai. As for the rest, I don't really care. When Li Yunqin escapes in the future, I hope you can explain it to him. She turned to look at Taoist Zai. You are only in the true state. Come forward. Taoist Zai immediately walked to the bottom of the stairs and half knelt on the ground. Taoist Clearwater raised his hand. Her fingertips suddenly shone. The 10,000-year ancestor is still in the vast sea. We can't disturb him for now. I will give you the power of the 3 seas of Penglai, Yingzhou, and Fenghu to help you return to the profound state. Yes. The light on Taoist Clearwater's fingertip flashed and disappeared into Taoist Zai's body. Lu Gongzan thought there would be a strange phenomenon. Many demons and cultivators in the world stopped in the true state. Taoist Clearwater said that she would raise Taoist Zai's cultivation to the true state. In fact, it was a very scary thing. But he didn't feel anything. The hall was still dark, and there wasn't even a slight breeze. Taoist Zai was still half kneeling on the stairs. He was a shadow in the darkness. However, he could indeed feel the changes in Taoist Zai's body. His spiritual power in the true state suddenly increased. It was as if there was a chaotic universe in his body. An unimaginable power burst out and expanded his body to infinity. The next moment it shrank back. Taoist Zai heaved a sigh of relief. He stood up. He was indeed in the profound state. Lu Gongzan was stunned. In terms of the improvement of the state, he was the first person in the world to reach the sky in one step. Even Li Yunqin couldn't compare with him. But Li Yunqin gave him the same profound state. It took a lot of effort. If it wasn't for Lord Tongtian's hatred, he wouldn't be able to have his current cultivation. However, at this moment, at this place, right in front of him, Man Qing Shui created a mystic realm with just a raise of his hand. This is. He didn't know what to say for a while. Shinryu sealed the sea and created 9 sea monster Dragon King. It's nothing more than this. Taoist Clearwater looked at Lu Gongzan. I have confirmed what I said for you. You can rest assured. She turned to Taoist Zai. Ancestor 10,000-year-old, how is it now? Taoist Zai restrained his majestic spiritual power, took a deep breath and said, Master, before you came here, I just got the news. Ancestor 10,000-year-old is in the vast sea formation. There are hundreds of people guarding him. He should be in the last step of refining. Previously, he told me to hold off Li Yunqin or Shinryu. He said that he will reach the profound state in 3 or 5 days. But since he excluded me from the matter of protector, it means that he is very wary of me. Therefore, I don't think his words can be trusted. I guess he will reach the profound state in 3 days. Maybe tomorrow, or even the day after tomorrow. He wants to be ahead of her. Taoist Clearwater's voice was cold. Lu Gongzan knew that the second her mentioned by Taoist Clearwater should be referring to Shinryu. I think so too. Then we should get Li Yunqin out of trouble as soon as possible. Taoist Clearwater pondered for a while. I sealed the power of the 3 seas for you. She must be able to sense it. She must be able to sense the weakening of her power. If she is also at a critical moment, she may be possessed by the devil. Speaking of this, Taoist Clearwater laughed. This was the first time Lu Gongzan saw her smile from the bottom of her heart. It was not a fake smile. It seemed that no matter what her identity was, Now that she returned to her own ninth sea, she was indeed much happier. But he still didn't understand. Taoist Clearwater could create a mysterious realm while talking, and it seemed that there were many disciples in the gate of heaven. Why did Qin Fengzi bring her here? Could it be that Penglai Island was the eye of the formation or something like that? Now that she was here, could she use her supernatural power or become stronger? What Taoist Clearwater did next seemed to confirm his guess. It's too dark. Taoist Clearwater said casually and waved her hand. Then the floor, walls, and dome of the entire hall immediately emitted a dim light, making the hall as bright as day. If Lu Gongzan didn't confirm that it was night time, and there were no windows in the hall, he would have thought that the day had come early. Then he saw the strange pictures on the wall of the hall clearly. He saw Taoist Clearwater raised her hand and waved in the air. A light immediately appeared in front of her. It was a small square. In this square, another scene appeared. Lu Gongzan looked inside and shouted, "Brother Xian." Chapter 747. A piece of pure white ground floated in what seemed to be an endless void. The area was large and extremely flat. Even if a perfectly round bead was placed anywhere on it, the bead would not roll. If Li Yunxin saw this piece of ground, he would be surprised to find that it was somewhat familiar. If he searched through his memories, he would remember that he had once stayed in a similar place. When he was in the Qing kingdom, he was summoned by Bai Yanjun to the underworld. Bai Yanjun had threatened him that if he did not cooperate, he would trap him there. A quarter of an hour in the mortal world could be equivalent to thousands of years there. He would go crazy. Right now there were two women standing on this piece of ground. It was impossible to tell their ages. They all had outstanding appearances, and they all had terrifying martial prowess. One was titled Qin Jun. The other was revered as Shinryu. It was just that the relationship between the two of them did not seem to be as incompatible as Li Yunxin had imagined it to be. On the contrary, Qin Jun's hand was in Shinryu's. Their expressions were calm, and there was not a hint of anger in their words. I did not want to come to this, but you know better than me that there is almost no place for us in the world today. Shinryu looked at Qin Jun, but it is not too late to regret it now. Qin Jun smiled faintly. I will not regret it. Since I already know the relationship between us, I know this is my only way out. For thousands of years, I have never suffered such humiliation as I did a few days ago. Since I cannot take revenge with the body of a normal demon, then as you said, we will become one and fulfill our wishes. Shinryu's expression changed slightly. She couldn't help but speak again. You are my only bloodline in the world. If it was not now, how could I? Mother, don't say any more. Compared to Shinryu, Qin Jun, the nether tide is coming. If we miss this time, we will have to wait for a few more months. Li Yunxin, and the 10,000-year ancestor, will not give us a second chance. Compose yourself, and finish this last task. The majestic and mysterious Shinryu, who was like a god in the hearts of the people, actually shut his mouth obediently. Where their palms met, a deep, dark light slowly appeared. Light cannot be dark. However, a ball of black energy was slowly spreading out from their palms, and it seemed like light. The black gas split into strands and climbed up their arms like slithering snakes. The dark deep space beyond the ground seemed to have come to life. Many tentacles reached out from the darkness and slowly climbed onto their bodies, as if trying to pull them into the endless darkness. This process seemed to be extremely painful. Even Zither Kuan and Shinryu, who were extremely powerful, started to frown. If an ordinary person were to experience something like this, that person would probably go crazy in an instant. This process lasted for nearly an hour. The dark light in their palms gradually covered their forearms, and the darkness in the surrounding void enveloped their bodies. Only their necks and heads could be vaguely distinguished, but it could be seen that the two were in even more pain. Suddenly, Shinryu let out a muffled groan and spat out a mouthful of golden blood. This golden blood was like bait, causing the dark light on her body and arms to go crazy, and immediately rushed into her mouth. When the two were cultivating, their 9 orifices were tightly shut. But now Shinryu was in trouble. Caught off guard, The dark light poured into her mouth. Although she immediately shut her mouth, the dark light around her body was like countless snakes that felt hostile, and thousands of strands flew up, as if there were many tentacles on her body. Zither-kun couldn't speak, and could only stare at Shinryu. But Shinryu held on for a while, and finally shook her head slightly, and with a shake of her arms, the dark light on their bodies immediately disappeared without a trace. Her legs softened, and Zither-kun immediately went to support her. "Mother, what's wrong?" "That bitch Chi-chuan." Shinryu gritted her teeth. In the end, she found the opportunity to come to the sea. She sealed the 3 Cs. Zither-kun didn't ask anymore, and sighed. The dark light around their bodies just now was the netherworld chi that Shinryu told Li Yunxin about. What the two were doing just now was refining it. Just like how the 10,000-year-old ancestor used the power of the demon soul to slowly refine the suppressed ancient demon's consciousness and instincts, these two were slowly refining the netherworld chi into their bodies and replacing the spiritual chi in their bodies. In the past few days, the two had slowly adapted to the pain of the netherworld chi entering their bodies. And today was the day of the dark tide. The so-called dark tide meant that at a specific time, the netherworld chi that seeped in from the entrance of the netherworld would become unusually strong. The arrival of the dark tide was irregular, but it could be detected a few days before it came. When the netherworld chi was at its most turbulent, the two were supposed to complete the last step. Using the netherworld chi to reconstruct their bodies, the two's cultivation realms were combined as one. After all, the method of refining the netherworld chi originated from Xianmen. Since that was the case, the method of circulating it in the body had a common principle. The netherworld chi was extremely overbearing. If it entered the body from the 9 orifices, it would quickly collide with the remaining spiritual chi in the body and destroy the body's meridians. Only by slowly absorbing it from the body, like absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, could one barely withstand it. But at the most critical moment, it was when Taoist Qing Shui sealed the 3 Cs on Zai Zhenren's body. Shinryu was originally formed by the spiritual chi of heaven and earth between the 9 Cs, and when the 3 Cs were sealed, the spiritual chi instantly stagnated. If it was under normal circumstances, it wouldn't cause such serious damage. But when the netherworld chi entered the body suddenly changed. It was like a person who was cultivating, and the spiritual chi in the body suddenly became chaotic. As such, there could only be one thing that would happen: chi deviation. When a mouthful of netherworld chi entered the body, the snow mountain, ocean of chi, and meridians were immediately damaged. Even if one's cultivation was high, he couldn't withstand such a blow from the inside out. I. Shinryu's face darkened. In a very short time, she spat out 3 mouthfuls of golden blood in succession, as if her body was deteriorating at a speed visible to the naked eye. For the past 1,000 years, I just wanted to live. She widened her eyes and looked at the void around her, as if she wanted to see the world outside of the void. It shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. I should be born to dominate, mother. Guzuan grabbed her shoulder. We still have time. Take your time to adjust your breathing. Otherwise, your injuries will become more serious. I can. It's too late. Shinryu suddenly looked at her. Chi-chuan is here, in Punglai. She's here. And Li Yunxin will know how to get out of trouble. You refine me. Guzuan was silent for a while, and then shook her head. I was willing to be refined by you because I was humiliated. I learned many things from you. And now I know that my original ambition was just a joke. If that's the case, what can I pursue in this world? Since I'm your bloodline, why don't I return this bloodline to you and let you take revenge for me? But now that you're asking me to refine you, what should I do after that? If Li Yunxin were to see the current appearance of these 2 people, she would definitely be genuinely shocked. Let's not talk about Shinryu's impression of the world. Just from the few times he met her, this Shinryu should be an ambitious person who would do anything to achieve her goals. This kind of existence that stands at the top of the world should have a heart of stone. Even if she wasn't, she shouldn't be like this. As for that Guzuan, the first time Li Yunxin had interacted with her, he had witnessed her deep scheming and incomparably heroic manner. In terms of the aura of a hero, it was even slightly better than the true dragon. At the foot of the cloud mountain, she stood on the back of the golden-horned giant centipede, commanding hundreds of thousands of demons to die without even blinking. But these two people, right now, were putting on such a show. If people who didn't know what was going on saw them, they would think that these two were a loving mother and a filial daughter, both passionately wanting to sacrifice themselves, leaving the hope of survival to the other. After Guzuan said these words, Shinryu used her remaining strength to shout, "Then you're willing to see me like this, like this? I've been trapped here for 1,000 years." Her eyes widened. "You're willing to see me without even a start, you? Let me think about it." Guzuan said quietly. Shinryu didn't speak anymore, closed her eyes, and tried to adjust her breathing. After an unknown amount of time, Guzuan sighed. "Okay." Shinryu also sighed lightly. "I'll adjust my breathing for another 4 hours. While the nether tide is still here, refine me. Okay. After that, I won't seek the position of the world's supreme." Shinryu sighed faintly. "First, take me to see the world. I want to try all the interesting and novel things." "Okay. And those?" But when she said that, their conversation was interrupted. On the platform, right in front of the two, a dot of light suddenly appeared. The dot of light quickly expanded and turned into a human figure. Li Yunxin's appearance appeared. "Ha! Guzuan, you dare to trick me?" He looked around with a gloomy face. As expected, after seeing that this place was surprisingly similar to the place where he stayed before, he was slightly surprised. But he quickly turned his attention back to the two. "Yo, what are you doing?" Guzuan helped Shinryu to stand up. She said coldly, "You're a little faster than we expected." Li Yunxin waved his hand and laughed. "You're flattering me. Someone gave me a clue, and I came up with this first. But as for other things, I'm probably not slower than you." Then he looked at Shinryu and frowned. "I heard that someone sealed the 3 C's in your body, but it shouldn't have hurt you to this extent. What are you doing? Emotional? I don't understand anything. I can't understand the sadness at all. Can one of you tell me, why are you enjoying the joy of a family?" Shinryu let out a sigh of relief, and his expression became slightly better. "Li Yunxin, do you think that the person who helped you is your ally? Do you know who she is?" Li Yunxin smiled and said, "I know. She's also a sacrificial pawn. She's the same as you." Chapter 748. "You?" Shinryu was taken aback. "You? Oh. Li Yunxin applauded himself. "Looks like it's true, it's true. I guessed it right." He didn't care about the two people glaring at him, and paced around the stage with his hands behind his back. "Damn it, it's so cool. I solved a big mystery in my heart." He turned around again. "Guess what, there's something I don't understand. I figured out the art saint's method of drawing people. Why is the person she made so strong? And the one I made was trash. Then I realized, oh, it's like a drop of rain, it needs a core, understand? The art saint drew Shinryu, so Shinryu should have a core. For example, I drew a body for little 9. I first used a scale to draw a boss Ya. Then, with the boss Ya as the core, I merged it with the 9th young master's consciousness, then absorbed the spiritual energy, and became him today. But I also know that the art saint drew Shinryu using the heavens as a formation. It's this heavens formation, together with a core, that's how Shinryu came to be. But what is the core of Shinryu? I don't understand. Then when I got to the sea, I realized that the 9 seas also formed a formation. I killed the Dragon King of the 9 seas, and restored the drawing of the 9 seas formation. I realized that this drawing can actually draw an existence. Who is this existence? It's you. Li Yunxin sighed. When I got here I was puzzled. If the 9 seas formation was you, Shinryu, in that case, what exactly is that Tianxia painting formation? But today, after Shimizu told me what she is, I realized that I was wrong. Li Yunxin stared at Shinryu eerily. You're not Shinryu. You're actually the core of Shinryu. Just like how I first drew the boss Ya. The art saint first used the 9 seas here to draw you. The real Shinryu had died a long time ago. Shinryu is finished. You, the core, will stay. What sleeping for 1,000 years? What greatly reduced strength? Your cultivation wasn't high to begin with. Not many people in the world knew about Shinryu's death. But she had made too many enemies in the past, and you were afraid that they would come looking for you. So you hid on Dragon Island, and pretended to be Shinryu. Pretending to be mysterious, pretending to be majestic. I was just wondering, why did I feel so out of place when I saw your imposing manner? Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief and said, asking Dragon Sun on land to fight is also because you are afraid. Afraid that they will see through you. If you ask me, it would have been better if you didn't do it. But you didn't do it well, which is why you exposed your shortcomings. What do you think? Now what should I call you? The Zither master looked at him coldly. It seemed that she already knew what Li Yunxin was talking about. Shinryu also straightened his body. He was no longer as shocked as before. Instead he laughed and said, good. Since you already know, why don't you think about it yourself? Li Yunxin curled his lips and said, what's so hard to think about? You are Kirin. Shinryu was silent. So he started to show off again. Guess how I thought of it? Oh, it was so long ago. In Wei City, Bai Yanjun taught me how to take over a body. He told me that dragons, Golden Rock, Dragon Sun Kirin. In his world, they are all just big animals. After that, I know there are dragons in this world. Golden Rock, Dragon Sun, there are dragons too. But where the hell is Kirin? I haven't seen him before? He spread his hands and said, let me think about the few times you showed your real body. Hiding in the clouds, hiding your head and showing your tail. You either showed your head, or showed a few scales. Wow, Kirin is a dragon head. Li Yunxin rubbed his hands and looked at Shinryu. Am I right? Am I right? Shinryu laughed coldly. No. Haha, I knew it. Huh. Li Yunxin laughed and was stunned. What? I am not the core. I am me. Now, you can call me Kirin Dragon. The Kirin, who revealed her identity, suddenly showed her god-demon body. It was just that her golden armor used to be dazzling. But now, the scales on her armor had become dull and dull. There were many winding black lines on it, because the unrefined aura of the netherworld had invaded her body. As for the Shinryu you mentioned, she died 1,000 years ago. The so-called core is also dead. Only a few wandering souls were left in this world. One of them became powerful, and became that Taoist Shimizu. And me. Kirin Dragon looked at Guqin Kuan beside her. A part of my true essence, and a part of Shinryu's true essence became her. Now who is Shinryu in the world? It should be her, not the fish monster in Dongting. Li Yunxin looked at her in confusion. Then what are you? Did she just make you up? Kirin Dragon smiled again. But her smile now was different from the time when she called herself Shinryu. Li Yunxin didn't know if it was his illusion, but he felt that Kirin Dragon's words and behavior were much more pleasing to the eye than before. Of course, pleasing to the eye only meant that she didn't have the subtle sense of incongruity as before. I come from the same origin as the Shinryu you mentioned. That's why. She looked at Guqin Kuan and her face softened. You are the most special one among the 9 Dragon Sun. You are resentful about your body. But do you know what the art saint said when you were born? Mother. Guqin Kuan took a look at Li Yunxin. But Kirin Dragon smiled. There is nothing to hide. If this person didn't come, I would have told you sooner or later. Now that he is here, let him listen carefully to what kind of noble identity you have. Li Yunxin, I know you have been investigating the art saint. I think you are also very interested in it. Her words scratched Li Yunxin's itch. Have you seen the art saint? The living one? Li Yunxin frowned. Say it. No hurry. Kirin Dragon turned to look at Guqin Kuan. Activate your power and refine me. Guqin Kuan was stunned. Now. Kirin Dragon sneered. Now. He is now a projection. But with the help of that bitch Chi Chuan, he will be here soon. Then you should also activate your power now. When I finish what I need to say, you can refine me. At that time, you will not be afraid of him. Then she looked at Li Yunxin. You can either listen to my story, or you can go back now and find a way to kill us as soon as possible. It is your choice. Li Yunxin sighed. You can even think of such a rogue method. Well, it seems that you know me quite well. If I go back now and figure out a way, will you die with your stories? Yes. Then I will not go. Li Yunxin said. Fighting and killing is not as interesting as listening to stories. Okay, then I will start. Kirin Dragon said this, and turned to look at Guqin Kuan. Guqin Kuan closed her eyes and took a deep breath. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes again and held Shinryu's hand. Where their palms met, a dark light spread out again. Kirin Dragon did not speak, but began to use his magical power to communicate. There are some so-called divine beasts in the world. Dragon Golden Rock and Kirin. She spoke very slowly, probably trying to stall for time. But the three of them had a tacit understanding about this. Li Yunxin didn't rush her. She just listened while looking at the darkness in the palms of the two people. But these three are different. Golden Rock is not a divine beast. He is just a demon. He is a bird in the forest. He obtained a powerful cultivation and became the Golden Rock King. But the other two, Dragon and Kirin, are not from this world. They are. Chen Zhao drew them. Li Yunxin said for her so that she would not go on a long story. Painful expressions began to appear on Kirin Dragon and Guqin Kuan's faces. She was silent for a long time because of this. But Li Yunxin did not rush her. This impostor who had pretended to be Shinryu for 1,000 years was now using her life to stall for time. Although the purpose of this sacrifice might not be noble, it might just be for some obsession or emotion in her heart. But Li Yunxin felt that in this era where demons were rampant and humans might be crueler than demons, it was not easy to encounter something like this. His impression of Shinryu changed a little. Perhaps what she had shown before was all a disguise. When a person is about to die, their words are kind. This was probably her original personality. Unfortunately, she went the wrong way. If she did not do those things in the beginning, and told him the truth directly, they might be allies. At least, they would not be mortal enemies. But Li Yunxin was just a nobody at that time. If he was in Kirin Dragon's position, he might not have done better. He could only sigh at the fickleness of the world. Poor communication had caused so much trouble. When the two were enveloped by the black aura, they heard Kirin Dragon's voice again. Before Shinryu appeared, I was created by the art saint. But my existence was not her intention. Or rather, it was not what she wanted. Chen Zhao came from another world. I have spent a lot of time with her. I am sure of this. In the words of her world, I am a trial product. But the thing she used to create me, in her words, came from a god in her world. Li Yunxin's heart skipped a beat. The thing that Shinryu mentioned should be something like a core. He had thought that if the art saint could draw Shinryu, it meant that there really were dragons in her world. Now that he heard Kirin's words, if what he said was true, it confirmed his guess. What kind of world was that? Or was God just a specific name for a certain kind of existence in that world? After she created me, she had experience and knew that this method would work. So she imprisoned me here, traveled the world and created Shinryu. She can be considered my and Shinryu's mother. She also said that Shinryu and I are descendants of that god. But she has never treated me as her daughter. It is the same for Shinryu. To her, we're just tools. Chapter 749. My cultivation is limited. Only in the 9 seas can I call the wind and summon the rain. But Shinryu is far more powerful than me. The whole world belongs to her. There is no inside story about what happened next. What the world knows is the truth. Shinryu conquered the world for her and subdued the demons. Then she used the demons to fight against Xianmen. Li Yunxin already knew why Shinryu fought against Xianmen, and why Chen Zhao wanted Shinryu to fight against Xianmen. He came to Midland as an emissary of another world, and gradually became disappointed with the actions of the reincarnated Devas. Combined with the words of Lin Long, Li Yunxin knew that when Yunshan, as one of the 3 saints, worked for the Devas on the surface, she had actually betrayed them. She was one of the leaders of Xianmen, but she secretly supported the demons. She wanted to use this to contain the power of the Freemasonry that was gradually growing. This woman was really good at this. He had also thought through another matter. How could this Lin Long really seal the 9 demons of the sea, Dragon King, out? Because the 9 seas was equivalent to herself. Just like how Shinryu divided the dragon soul and fused the demon essence to create Dragon Sun, She could also use the Reiki between the sea and the sky, and fuse the demon essence to create Dragon King. But after all, she was a low-level version. The Dragon King created was far less powerful than Dragon Sun. But on the sea, beside him, it was enough to scare others. Not long ago, Taoist Qingshui had told him about the 9 goddesses on the sea, such as Goddess Qichuan, Goddess Penglai, and so on. Although she didn't explain in detail, Li Yunqin had a strong understanding of painting. In addition to his actual experience, what he knew was far more than what the people of Qingshui sect thought. When he was seizing the body in the city of Wei, he distributed many portraits in and out of the city of Wei. Those portraits were attached with his Reiki. He used those portraits to attract the power of faith and the yang qi of people to create his Dragon Sun body. This method was taught to her by Bai Yanjun. Without a doubt, Bai Yanjun's method must have come from the art saint. This meant that when the art saint painted Shinryu, he used the same method. Then, there must be something similar to the paintings that he had placed inside and outside the city of Wei, imbued with his own spiritual qi, absorbing the power of will and spiritual qi from the world painting formation. Only then was Shinryu created. In the past, Li Yunqin had occasionally thought of finding those things to confirm his guess. However, he knew that it was difficult for such things to have a fixed form. It could be a statue, a painting, a stone tablet, or even something like a pavilion. But after hearing what Taoist Qingshui said to him, he realized that the thing he was looking for was already with him before he entered the city of Wei. Mrs. Sanhua. When he first saw Mrs. Sanhua Temple, it had been dilapidated for a long time. However, one could tell that the statue had been left behind by an expert. Now that master should be the art saint Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao divided the Midland and the surrounding oceans into 9 seas. Each sea had a concubine conferred upon it. Lin Long called Taoist Qingshui Qichuan. She should have been Goddess Qichuan. These 9 goddesses, more than 2,000 years ago, absorbed the power of faith and gathered the spiritual qi of the world. They played the role of the paintings that he left in the city of Wei, and together with the core, they created Shinryu. After Shinryu died, these 9 goddesses could be seen as a part of Shinryu, so their minds were damaged. That's why Mrs. Sanhua and Goddess Penglai were so crazy. Only Qichuan. It should be like what Lin Long said. He had some adventures, so he kept his mind, and even improved his cultivation. And because Li Yunqin received so much information in one day, he was shocked to the point of numbness. And because he had seen all kinds of things before, he had some deductions. Therefore, when he thought of the 3 flower goddesses, Penglai goddesses and Qichuan goddesses, he was not too shocked when he thought of another thing. Instead, he felt a sense of stability, as if the dust had finally settled. That was, if Shinryu was completely dead, the 9 goddesses who absorbed the power of faith and spiritual qi, for Shinryu, should not still exist in this world. But since they were still here, this meant that Shinryu was not completely dead, but was in a subtle state. He was familiar with this state. Possession. Shinryu was possessed. Chen Zhao was not dead. Once this thought was confirmed, even though he was mentally prepared, his mind was blank for a moment. Then, he waved his hand and looked at Lin Long, who was completely wrapped in the power of the netherworld. You said that the art saint regarded you and Shinryu as tools. Then let me ask you, the so-called 9 sons of Shinryu to guard the world, is it? After a while, Lin Long said faintly, Shinryu had a much worse fate than me. Chen Zhao created her not only to subdue the demons, but also to leave a way out for himself. 1,000 years ago the world was set. So she asked Shinryu to divide the dragon essence, fuse with the demon soul, and seal 9 dragon sun. The first is me, the Guqin. Half of her is mine, and the other half is Shinryu's. But Shinryu and I are from the same source. In Chen Zhao's words, we are both the blood of the gods in her world. The Guqin created by the fusion of our souls, was born with a holy body. Do you know what a holy body is? Li Yunqin frowned slightly and thought about it. The word sacred also existed in his world. But the meaning of the word was special in his world. At that time, when the word was associated with the word God, it was mainly not used to describe the local gods. Instead, it was used to describe some Western gods. His eyes brightened as he suddenly thought of something. In his world, an angel could be called a divine body, and an angel was sexless. If there really were dragons and gods in his world, then Guqin should be a special case. It meant that she had indeed inherited the so-called blood of gods, and was very powerful. I know. Li Yunxin frowned and said in a low voice. So, you don't have to worry about your body. The reason why you have such a body is because your bloodline is the closest to the bloodline of the gods. Lin Long's words should have been directed at the Zither monarch, but they were both wrapped in the netherworld aura, so Li Yunxin could not see Guqin's expression. When she was born, Chen Zhao must have felt uneasy, but at that time, Shinryu was so powerful that even Chen Zhao was afraid of her. She couldn't destroy Guqin. That way, Shinryu would know her intentions in advance. At that time, Chen Zhao already suspected that Shinryu was gradually trying to break away from her control, because she had conquered all the demons in the world. Thus, before the Zither monarch regained her consciousness, she split half of the dragon soul in her body. So she turned from a natural grand elder to the peak of the profound realm. Using this method, she asked Shinryu to seal 9 dragon sons. After this incident, Shinryu's strength was greatly reduced. Why didn't Shinryu have any complaints? But maybe she was like me. She always felt that Chen Zhao was her mother. She hesitated. It was this hesitation that ultimately cost her her life. Chen Zhao never hesitated. He had already found Golden Rock before. Then, she worked with Golden Rock to plot and kill Shinryu. Another cloud in Li Yunxin's mind was suddenly dispelled. It was about the dragon soul hidden in Dongting. Design, Li Yunxin said in a low voice. Chen Zhao and Golden Rock's plan. Did it mean that Golden Rock pretended to fight with Shinryu and was defeated? Then, she told Shinryu that she set up a formation to suppress Golden Rock. She asked her to divide half of the dragon soul to be the formation eye? Exactly. Dividing the dragon soul to be the formation eye. Dividing the dragon soul to seal the 9 sons. It happened almost at the same time. Kiran sighed softly. Chen Zhao never hesitated. She had never hesitated. Ever since she had used the true dragon, everything she had done was to weaken her power. From the beginning, she had no feelings for me and Shinryu. But the two of us. Li Yunxin did not pay attention to her lamentation. His mind worked quickly. In return, I'll ask the Golden Rock to pretend to be suppressed for 1,000 years, to make people think that the true dragon is still alive, to make people think that Qining is really dead, to make people not guess. She took over Shinryu's body. Now Golden Rock was born again. Without King Shinryu in the world, King Golden Rock became the master of all the demons in the world. It was worth it for Golden Rock, who had an almost endless lifespan, to use 1,000 years to exchange for such a result. It turned out that the dragon sons and dragon souls of the continent, which everyone was confused about, and had even caused great waves, were just small tricks to Chen Zhao that couldn't even be considered as casual chess pieces to him. No, maybe they were not even small tricks. She didn't care about these things at all. She didn't care about how ants fought. No wonder Li Yunxin couldn't see the function of the dragon soul hidden in Dongting, and the so-called formation eye. It turned out to be a cover. What formation eye? There was no formation eye at all. It was used to deceive Shinryu. What the hell? He thought Shinryu was dignified and scheming. But in the end, was it really like what Linlong said? That she was a little girl who died? Chen Zhao didn't die, then she went to the netherworld. What kind of terrifying enemy could there be in the netherworld, that even Chen Zhao, who was so cunning and had joined the Grand Supreme Realm, together with the Black and White Yama Lords, could not defeat him? What kind of terrifying enemy could there be in the netherworld, that even the Black Yama Lord had died? Li Yunxin gasped. So, I was imprisoned here for 1,000 years, and could only leave my shadow on the midland. So, I want to open the entrance to the netherworld. Linlong's voice came again. I want to ask her face to face. Is it really useless to abandon a pawn? Chapter 750. Li Yunxin was silent for a while. The disdain and mockery on his face was gone. He had at first thought that the false dragon was a cowardly creature, who who knew only how to plot, and that her so-called plots had not been successful. But after hearing what she said, he could not help but realize that a hateful person could also be pitiful. The Kirin Dragon's situation, experiences, and people were all disadvantageous to her. She had been able to hold on for 1,000 years in such a disadvantageous situation. She was indeed outstanding. When he thought about how the art saint was the one behind all this, he felt a sense of sympathy for him. But opponents were still opponents. The Kirin Dragon's words did not mean that she was trying to gain Li Yunxin's sympathy. On the contrary, she seemed to want to cut off all means of retreat. Gu Qingjun had refined the Kirin Dragon. Gu Qingjun would not let it go. He sighed. So what if I asked? I had some questions in the past. I was thinking about asking Chen Zhao when I saw him. But then I understood. Since she did those things, she must have her reasons. It's hard to convince someone. You won't get any results. Plus, didn't you say that you wanted to open the entrance to the netherworld, to fill the world with the netherworld qi? You should know how many people will die if you really do that. But you don't care. You don't care about the lives of billions of people. Chen Zhao also doesn't care about you and Shinryu. You're just the same. That's because of her. The Kirin Dragon said hatefully. And because I want to ask her if an abandoned pawn has no value? I want to show her what I can do by leaving an abandoned pawn like me in the world. By then, even the golden rock won't be my match. I want to show her what the golden rock can do. Didn't he still lose to me? Sigh. You're going astray. Li Yunxin sighed again. You're going to take revenge on society for one person. Then no one will sympathize with you. I don't need sympathy. I don't need sympathy. The Kirin Dragon's voice grew weaker. However, it wasn't because he had run out of strength. Instead, it was more like he was gradually fading away. Her voice became faintly discernible, as if a gust of wind could blow it away. I just can't accept it. I was about to succeed. I just can't accept that at this time. By the time she had uttered the last few words, her voice was almost inaudible. It's all in vain. Li Yunxin added the last 4 words for her. Actually, he could understand this feeling. As a trial product that didn't satisfy the author, it was imprisoned on this dragon island for 1,000 years. His heart was filled with unwillingness and resentment, and he caused a lot of trouble. What he wanted was to become the person that he had disguised himself as, to possess great power and go to the world. At that time, all the worries of the past 1,000 years would no longer exist. Finally, he could live proudly, and he could even do something else. Find the creator and ask him why. Unfortunately, he fell at the last step before he succeeded. It was not giving up because there was no hope, nor was it giving up halfway. It was the last step. Nothing in the world could be more fucked up than this. It could also be considered a powerful divine beast. Unfortunately, he was nameless when he was alive, hiding in someone else's shadow. After death, he would also be nameless, hiding in Zither Monarch's shadow. Li Yunxin went to look at Zither Monarch, because at this time, Qilong's figure also slowly dissipated. She turned into countless black lights and entered Zither Monarch's body. Very quickly, the netherworld aura around Zither Monarch's body also slowly dissipated, revealing her face and body. She had changed her face. It was still Long Da's appearance, but without a doubt, there was also Qilong's appearance. The expression on her face was very familiar. It was the same appearance she had when she was leading the demons on land. Li Yunxin stared at her, and she stared back at Li Yunxin. After staring at each other for a while, Li Yunxin said, "So you have successfully refined it?" Zither Monarch's voice was calm and steady. "Yes." "Is it Grand Supreme?" Zither Monarch closed her eyes to feel for a while, then opened them again. "Yes." Her eyes were also very calm, but this kind of calmness was like the calmness of a ferocious beast staring at a trembling prey in front of it. There was a sense of complete control, and a strong killing intent. "Congratulations." Li Yunxin smiled. "I've been calculating for the past few days. There are many Grand Supreme in this world. The Cloud Mountain Sages, Shinryu, and the Golden Rock King are all Grand Supreme. But the Cloud Mountain Sages are fake, and so is Shinryu. The Golden Rock King is real, but I have never seen him. I also have a Grand Supreme in my ears. But how do I put it? I feel that they are a little different from the Grand Supreme of this world. So I am curious about the realm of a true Grand Supreme, and what kind of power they have. You will soon find out. Zither Monarch said this as she sat down cross-legged. He seemed to have just entered an extremely powerful realm, so he needed to adjust his breathing and adapt for a while. For the sake of listening to some stories, you made us do this. Don't you regret it? Li Yunxin continued to smile. The reason why I can live a carefree and enjoyable life in such a disgusting world is that I'm always curious about everything new. Just like what I said just now, I was also curious about the level of the Grand Elder in this world. So why don't you? Not because I'm attracted to stories. Rather, I took the initiative to give you the time to complete this step, just so you could become a Grand Elder. Just to satisfy my curiosity, Qin Jun's lips curled into a cold smile. As a result, the entire space trembled slightly, and even Li Yunxin's image became slightly blurry for a moment. It's not your fault, she said. You don't know anything about the power of the very high, and that's why you're talking so confidently. If it was me in the past, perhaps I would have done the same. She stood up. This place is filled with the power of the netherworld. Even if your real body came here and summoned your very high's helper, I'm afraid it would be difficult to turn the situation around. The power of the netherworld is overwhelming. The higher one's realm, the more serious the injury. Not only am I not afraid of your very high's helper, but I'm also looking forward to it. Because I'm just as curious about the power of the very high as you are. Since you and him really came, it's a good opportunity for me to try it out. Li Yunxin shook his head. Do you realize that you've made a mistake? The same mistake as your mother's? Zither Monarch did not speak. He continued. Between us, there's no such thing as an irreconcilable enmity. If there is, it's you who tricked me first. When we were at Manwan Mountain, you in hatred asked me to go to Cloud Mountain. You even said that you'd put a curse on me. So I went. But then you showed up again and said that you wanted me dead. You did this to me first, so I took revenge on you. One way and one way were even. What about your mother? She didn't have any enmity with me before. She took things too hard and provoked me, so I came here. Before she died, she regretted. I know what she regretted. That she didn't take advantage of many opportunities and made some enemies that she shouldn't have. Now that the two of you are together, can you feel her regret? If you can, can't you try to think of such a thing? You're the very high. The 10,000-year ancestor outside may also become very strong. That's why I can give you a chance here. You help me deal with the 10,000-year ancestor. Then we'll go our separate ways. Don't think about opening a hole in the netherworld or anything like that. I don't care what you do on land. Li Yunxin paused and said seriously, I'm now seriously proposing this to you. I've been thinking about this since I allowed you to come this far. Zither Master sighed softly. You still don't know what the very high is. Li Yunxin spread her hands. Oh, so there's no room for negotiation. Neither you nor Emperor Li will survive, Zither Master said calmly. I won't go to you. I'll wait for you and your very high to come here. Alas, I gave you a chance. Li Yunxin curled his lips. It's not because of anything else. It's because of Emperor Li. I didn't think that he could. Shut up. Zither Master frowned. The ground that the two of them were standing on, the originally extremely solid ground, suddenly twisted. It was as if it had become a piece of paper that was being kneaded by a powerful force. The platform rolled up and down like the surface of the water. At the corners, there were even many fragments splashing in all directions. The material of this platform should be the same as that of the secret room that Li Yunxin lived in. Back then, Li Yunxin had spent a lot of effort to stab the wolf-spine raging lion spear into it, but only a small part of it went in. After it was pulled out, the ground quickly returned to its original state. A few days ago, when he was bored out of his mind, he had tested to see how far this material could go. But the conclusion was that with his current level of cultivation, no matter what method he used, he couldn't destroy it. It always recovered quickly. But now, Zither Master only shouted angrily. The edge of the platform was broken, as if it had been casually torn off. However, Li Yunxin only glanced at the fragments indifferently and sneered. Good. How impressive. For the sake of your mother's story, I gave you a chance, which could be considered as benevolent. I'm not usually so soft-hearted. But since you refused, he shook his head. There's no need for you to look for me. I'm coming. As soon as he finished speaking, the image suddenly changed subtly. Although the projection was no different from a real person, a strong person with a high level of cultivation could see through it at a glance. Because the projection had no spiritual power, it looked like a paper man at a glance. But after saying this, the projection turned into reality. I already knew how to get here. Li Yunxin clasped his hands behind his back and took 2 steps on the platform that had been distorted beyond repair. He looked at Zither Master. Do you think I'm joking? I just want to see what will happen after you guys refine it. The ground around the Zither Master was like a lotus leaf being violently blown by a storm, shaking like water. A terrible cracking sound. This was the sound of incomparably sturdy bones shattering inch by inch, was especially clear amidst the loud noise, like a series of firecrackers exploding. A figure was sent flying, drawing 3 or 4 lines of golden blood in midair. But the golden blood was quickly corroded by the netherworld chi that filled the space and turned into golden chi. The one who was sent flying was Li Yunxin. He landed heavily a dozen steps away, looking very miserable. The right arm that had struck Zither Monarch's body had completely disappeared. But it was not broken. Every inch of bone was shattered. Every muscle was torn and shrunk into the chest cavity. As a result, more than half of his body was destroyed. 6 or 7 pale blue ribs protruded from his chest, revealing sharp stubble. He did not know how many of them had pierced into his internal organs, or whether his internal organs had turned into a paste. But the Zither Monarch was still standing in place. Not even her hair moved. After a full 2 breaths of time, Li Yunxin finally caught his breath. He hissed in pain as he inhaled. Using his left hand to grab his right shoulder, he suddenly pulled out his limp and shapeless right arm. It hung by his side like a broken pipe. Then he fiercely slapped his chest a few times to push back the ribs that had pierced out. Only then did he frown and fiercely hold his breath, pushing his chest out. Seeing him do all this, the Zither Master knew why he wanted to try. Li Yunxin did not know what the Grand Supreme Realm meant. In fact, anyone who had not reached the Grand Supreme Realm would find it hard to imagine. The Grand Supreme Body was practically one with the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was indestructible, indestructible, and indestructible. What Li Yunxin was facing was an indestructible wall. No matter how much power he used to attack, the power would be reflected in his own body. Striking a rock with an egg was a common saying that was most suitable to describe this state. When facing a boulder, there was no difference between 1 egg and 100 eggs. She could not be defeated by external forces. The only thing that could defeat her was internal forces. Li Yunxin's injury was so severe that even Dragon Sun's body could not bear it. The Zither Master knew that if she was in Li Yunxin's place, she would definitely not be able to recover within 2 breaths. She slowly stood up and took a few deep breaths. Her body quickly healed, but her face was slightly pale. With such a strong body, it was no wonder that he wanted to try the power of the Grand Supreme. But now you should understand what the Grand Supreme Realm is, the Zither Master said. Do you want to try again? Li Yunxin's face did not look good. Although serious injuries could be quickly healed, they still left behind internal injuries. What was more troublesome was that the netherworld chi that filled this space also invaded his body through his injuries, forcing him to use a part of his strength to protect his snow mountain, 7 seas, and meridians. He waved his hand. No need to try. Damn it. I regret. I should have become the Grand Supreme back then. It's all the fault of those 2 Yunshan bastards. I thought the Grand Supreme was nothing special. Then die. The Zither Master took a step forward. Li Yunxin hurriedly stared at her. Wait. Don't you wonder why I came to find you? The Zither Master took a second step. Because my Grand Supreme Realm was cultivated with the netherworld chi. You naturally knew that I would not go to find you. That way, Without the netherworld chi, I would only be an empty shell. Just like an ordinary Grand Supreme without spiritual energy, he would not be able to do anything. So, you naturally came to find me, because you knew that I would not go. Because if you want me to leave here and join the 10,000-year ancestor, you really have no other choice. My mother has already told me this. What else do you have? Use it. The Zither Master raised her hand. If you lose this last chance, you will disappear from this world. Li Yunxin opened his mouth and said with a sense of defeat, "Fine. You've become smarter. I originally wanted to say these words to you. Hey!" A ray of light shot out from the Zither Master's fingertip and went straight between his eyebrows. Shocked, Li Yunxin quickly dodged. But the ray of light still brushed past his forehead and nearly blew half of his head off. Before he could speak, the second ray of light shot out. It was still going straight between his eyebrows, so he quickly dodged again. But this time, it still brushed past his head, and even the position was exactly the same as before. Then came the third, fourth, fifth, and fifth ray. Each ray was fiercer than the last, but Li Yunxin dodged all of them. With the Grand Supreme Realm, she should not have missed so many times. Li Yunxin had exhausted all his energy to dodge and dodge, so he did not have the energy to speak. But he could still see the faint sneer on the Zither Master's face. As she smiled, she pressed down on her finger again and again. It was as if a person looked at the rows of ants on the ground and stretched out his finger. Very patiently and cruelly, he was crushed to death one by one, like a cat that had caught a mouse and was slowly toying with him before killing it. Li Yunxin had no time to argue. The Zither Master spoke. Do you think that in this world, you are the only one with courage, that you are the proudest? Do you think that I did not kill you in one blow, because of what you said? You want to try the Grand Supreme Realm, but I also want to try. What other tricks do you have? She accurately and restrainedly sent out rays of light from her fingertips. No matter how Li Yunxin dodged, each ray of light brushed past the same place without the slightest deviation. In this way, she played with Li Yunxin, who had surpassed the ordinary mysterious realm, in the palm of her hand, presumptuously but patiently declaring her power. Perhaps Li Yunxin's current appearance had stirred up some emotions in her heart, or perhaps those emotions did not completely belong to the Zither Master of the past, but her tone slowly became emotional and no longer calm. You love design and so do I. You have self-confidence and so do I. You caused me to be reduced to a miserable state worse than death. And now you're telling me. What kind of ally? Do you know why I was willing to be refined by her? It's because I don't want to leave this body in this world. It's a shame to be alive. But now that the heavens have given me a new body, I have nothing to fear. What are you doing in this state? Being a clown? The Zither Master's fingertips finally trembled as she said this. So the ray of light slightly deviated and brushed against Li Yunxin's face, leaving a deep wound that exposed the bone. Golden blood gushed out again. She stopped and sneered. My patience is running out. I'm not interested in your current appearance. Li Yunxin finally had a chance to catch his breath. He stopped panting, and his throat sounded like bellows. He stared at the Zither Master's fingers, as if worried that she would shoot another ray of light and take his life. The Zither Master sneered again. Who are you showing this appearance to? When you were in Manwan Mountain, Cloudy Mountain, and Tongtian Swamp, whenever you showed this kind of expression, you must be thinking of something. Using your... Li Yunxin had already sat on the ground before she could say the words. Let's do it. Chapter 752. Zither Lady thought that he would act nonchalantly and say a few more words before he was willing to act. However, she saw that Li Yunxin had already pointed at a spot on the ground and drew something. He then shouted, Great Sage, save me. I'm going to fucking die. Then something strange happened. Outside the platform that the two were standing on was an endless void. But the void in front of them suddenly distorted. Although the naked eye could not see the void distort, they could feel it. It was as if a dam had opened its floodgates. The netherworld chi in this space began to surge and pour out in all directions. The speed at which the netherworld chi dissipated was beyond anyone's imagination. From the moment Zither Lady sensed that something was wrong to the moment she reacted, and activated the netherworld chi. No more than a blink of an eye had passed. But in such a short period of time, the space had become empty, and there was not even a trace of netherworld chi left. It was also after Li Yunxin shouted that a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Zither Lady's fingertip shot out a ray of chi. The figure gave a cold snort and casually waved his hand. The terrifying power that had forced Li Yunxin to dodge in a fluster and render her helpless immediately vanished into thin air. At this time, Li Yunxin finally let out a long sigh of relief. But he still sat on the ground without any grace, his face pale. His lips trembled for a while before he said, "Damn it, scared me to death, scared me to death." The one who had blocked the ray of chi from Zither Lady was the great sage in his ear. The great sage was as sullen as ever, crouching in front of Li Yunxin with his Jingu Bang in his arms. He was short, but the terrifying aura he exuded made it impossible for anyone to look down on him, including Zither Monarch. Right now, the Zither Lady looked a little lost. In fact, she still did not understand the netherworld chi that filled the entire space, and that even if Li Yunxin summoned the great sage in his ear, he would not be able to match. Where did it go? But no matter what the reason was, she had already begun to feel the power in her body rapidly weakening. She should not have come here, but there was a reason for it. The secular world was full of spiritual energy. When people cultivated in the secular world, they would refine spiritual energy into their bodies. If the spiritual energy in the world suddenly disappeared, cultivators could still use the spiritual energy in their bodies. Although the spiritual power would slowly dissipate, it would be a process that would take tens of thousands of years, far exceeding the lifespan of a cultivator. This was because when cultivators cultivated, there was the concept of nurturing and consolidating. Every time he reached a new realm, he would have to spend a lot of time nourishing and consolidating it. It was like using the spiritual energy in his body to turn it into a foundation. Even if one didn't deliberately nourish it and only moved around in a world filled with spiritual power, it was like soaking in a nourishing spring, and the cultivation method would automatically circulate. However, all the cultivators in the world knew that there were still some unorthodox methods. Those evil cultivation methods could open up alternative paths, allowing a person's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. However, the downside of evil cultivation methods was that the speed at which one's cultivation level rose was too fast, making it unstable. It was for the same reason that Li Yunxin chose to stay in the profound realm instead of advancing to the grand sections. As for the method that Qilong obtained from the 10,000-year ancestor to refine the power of the netherworld, it belonged to the evil path of the evil path. The 10,000-year ancestor spent tens of thousands of years refining it, so his foundation was considered solid. The time that Qilong used was less than 1,000th of the 10,000-year ancestor's time. But he also became a grand sex. How could the word unstable describe his foundation? As for this Zither Lady, after Qilong was injured, she managed to do such a thing in just a short period of time. For example, an extremely thin leather bag was suddenly filled with a lot of water, and it should have burst. But when it was also immersed in water, the limit that it could withstand was a little higher. This limit was called the grand sections. But now, the netherworld chi in the void had suddenly disappeared completely. The water in the leather bag began to overflow. The dissipation of the power also caused her mind to waver. Zither Lady gritted her teeth. How could it be? Li Yunxin panted and looked at her as if he still had a lingering fear. But finally, he could smile with a pale face. Don't be complacent. I've been in the business for so long, but this is the first time I almost died. If your hand had trembled just now, you would be the one smiling now. Damn it. I won't do this again. But Zither Lady only whispered. How could it be? Li Yunxin used his hands to support himself and slowly stood up. But he still didn't dare to face the current Zither Lady, so he cowardly hid behind the great sage. The great sage looked down on him, rolled his eyes, and moved to the side. Li Yunxin hurried over and said, What do you mean how could it be? You're just a small boss, and you really think you're a demon king? I used this move when I came to see you, if it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to. The great sage frowned. Shut up. Do you want to kill him? Li Yunxin hurriedly said. Great sage, don't be impatient, don't be impatient. This guy just stole my words, and almost scared me to the point of peeing my pants. If I don't finish, I won't be able to think clearly. The Monkey King glared at him. Make it short. Li Yunxin could only sigh. Fine. You're my ancestor. All right, I won't keep you in suspense. He paused and stared at Zither Lady, then pointed to the ground. Do you know what this place is? I was trapped by you guys over there, but you guys were hiding over here. I thought, since this so-called Dragon Island was created by the people of that world, it must have its uses. But Qilin told me that Dragon Island was used to guard the entrance to the Netherworld. That's what this place means. In the words of that world, Dragon Island should be a central control room, used to control the entrance to the Netherworld. Since it's an entrance, there should be a door. I thought for a long time, but I still couldn't figure out where the door was. But one day, you came to see me. That was the time you wanted to trick me out, and said that Qilin was refining you here. You also said that this place was filled with thin netherworld energy. Li Yunxin slowly calmed down when he returned to his most familiar and proficient way of shooting off his mouth. The more he spoke, the prouder he became. The embarrassed look from before was completely gone. He had indeed held back these words in his heart for many days. He wanted to say them before he used his last killing move, but Zither Lady had learned her lesson and didn't give him the slightest chance. Now that she had the time, she spoke quickly and anxiously. Now I understand everything. Li Yunxin smiled proudly. There's something I've said before. The difference between us isn't in our cultivation level, but in our horizons. You two thought that you didn't reveal anything, but in fact, you've revealed everything. So I understand what this place is. He pointed to his feet. It's an airlock. Zither Lady's fingers moved. She seemed to be looking for an opportunity to kill Li Yunxin. However, the Monkey King in front of Li Yunxin wasn't as relaxed as he seemed. His violent aura locked onto every part of Zither Lady's body. Zither Lady, who had just entered the Grand Supreme Realm, and whose realm was rapidly falling, had no doubt that if she attacked, the monkey would immediately jump up and scatter her attack like last time. So she just repeated the words from Li Yunxin's mouth. Airlock. Airlock. Li Yunxin tirelessly explained to her. For example, there's poisonous gas outside, so I made an airlock. Before a person goes out, he first goes into the airlock, closes the door behind him, and then opens the front door. This way, the poisonous gas won't flow into the house. When he comes back from outside, he has to go through the airlock first, let out the poisonous gas inside, and then open them into the house. The place where you and Qilin are staying has thin netherworld energy. If it's not an airlock, what is it? When I thought of this, I realized that the command to open and close the airlock wouldn't be too difficult. It definitely wouldn't be the core command of that house. It's just that I didn't understand one or two small details, so it took some time. But what kind of brain do I have? After thinking about it for a while, it all made sense. Hee small details? Didn't that Taoist Qing Shui tell you not long ago? The Monkey King laughed and spat on the ground. Li Yunxin paused awkwardly and blinked her eyes. Anyway, I got it. Do you understand now? He sighed. I did give you a chance. I can empty this place at any time. It's you who didn't cherish it. The Monkey King became impatient. He seemed to look down on Li Yunxin's behavior and shouted, Are you done? Li Yunxin had to shut up and spread out his hands. The demon monkey stood up. He stared at Zither Lady for a while. You have some skills. Come, let me fight you. He was more straightforward than the two people here. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his stick and hit. However, Zither Lady didn't dodge. She stared at Li Yunxin. So, you knew that we would lose, but you still looked at my mother and asked me to refine her. The Monkey King's golden cudgel fell with the force of wind and thunder, and with one strike, half of her body was covered with bloody wounds. It was as if her body was an extremely hard stone statue. Zither Lady didn't move. She just stared at Li Yunxin and shouted, You despicable villain! The demon monkey took a step back and didn't hit again. He stared at Zither. Hey, why aren't you fighting? Zither lady sneered. Fighting? You want me to play with you again? I'd rather die standing. Who's playing with you? I old son don't. Zither lady sneered again and closed her eyes. Li Yunxin realized something and immediately shouted, Great sage. But it was too late. The Monkey King also sneered. Hey, you have some backbone. Fine. Since you've been tricked by him to this point, I also can't stand his behavior. You can end it yourselves. After saying this, he looked at Li Yunxin and narrowed his eyes. She has already received one hit from me. If you still can't beat her, hee. After saying this, his figure flashed and in the blink of an eye, he returned to Li Yunxin's ear. Li Yunxin stomped his feet in anger. Monkey brain. She's the one playing with you. But there was no response from his ear. Chapter 753. He could only look at the Zither lady. He found that the cracks on the latter's body caused by the great sage's strike were emitting thick black gas. She was already dispersing her internal energy, and now that she had taken another blow, her injuries worsened. But the Zither lady finally smiled. She brushed her hand over her body, and the cracks disappeared and her body healed. Li Yunxin said, We can still. But how could she give him a chance to speak? The space around him suddenly shrank, and in an instant he was trapped inside. The Zither lady clenched her right hand, and without saying a word, she exerted force. All the air in his body was squeezed out, and Li Yunxin seemed to be on his own. Only his bones, which were harder than refined iron, were still holding on, but they were also cracking. It was as if countless tiny cracks were wriggling on them, and they were about to shatter into powder at any moment. If it was the Zither lady a quarter of an hour ago, this blow would have killed Li Yunxin without a doubt. But now, although her body was fine, her internal injuries were extremely serious. Her injuries, and the continuous drop in her cultivation level, made her feel that her strength was declining. She knew what she was going to face, so she wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Li Yunxin. But things did not go as she wished. For some reason, the distorted space around Li Yunxin suddenly collapsed. He fell to the ground, gasping for breath. He casually set up several restrictions around him, and with a snap of his pinky finger, he summoned dozens of magic treasures and used them on himself. The treasures he possessed were originally comparable to the collections of any sect. But he had been so extravagant when using them, and now there were not many left. Apart from the ones protecting him, he only had dozens of weapons left. But at the juncture of life and death, how could he have the time to care about these worldly possessions? With a light shout, dozens of weapons shot towards Zither monarch like a storm. The Zither lady used the same trick, and once again grasped the air. Li Yunxin had long since sensed his intentions. She immediately split into a dozen phantoms, and moved about in a flash. But he did not know the methods of the Grand Supreme. Even if it was a Grand Supreme on the verge of collapse, dozens of illusions disappeared at the same time, leaving only the Grand Supreme. The original body was caught again. This time, he was protected by a magic treasure. As a result, layers upon layers of mysterious light erupted around him. The powerful force tore through those magic treasures like tearing a thin piece of paper. In less than a breath of time, all the restrictions and magic treasures were destroyed. He was squeezed into a long strip, like a small person being held in the palm of a giant. The Zither master gripped him tightly and raised her left hand. He only used one finger to catch the first divine weapon that was flying towards him. It was an incomparably sharp sword. Although it was not the most outstanding of the many treasures left behind by Cloud Mountain, it was still refined by the previous sages, and could be considered indestructible. But now that it was being controlled by Li Yunxin, it could not be controlled by incantations. It could only be regarded as something stronger than ordinary magic treasures. The moment this treasure touched Zither Monarch's fingertip, it exploded with a bang, and turned into countless fragments that splashed in all directions. It was as if it was made of flour and collapsed upon contact. Debris flew everywhere. Those that hit Zither Monarch's body once again exploded into even smaller fragments. They were really crushed into powder. She did not sweep away all the weapons. Instead, she exploded them one by one at an unimaginable speed. It was also at this time that she spoke. I should have killed you at Cloud Mountain. I should have killed you at Cloud Mountain. It was my mistake that allowed you to live until now. But now, I will not make the same mistake again. Farewell, Li Yunxin. There were only 4 weapons left flying toward her. But to her, they were as insignificant as a gust of wind. At this moment, many divine weapons were ignited one by one, and the metal smoke produced shrouded her figure, making her look like a fairy from the 9 heavens in the midst of clouds and mist. But the fairy's eyes were locked onto Li Yunxin's figure. At this last moment, she did not give him any chance. Every flow of vital energy in Li Yunxin's body was under her control, which meant that even if he exhaled lightly, Zither Monarch would know how much he exhaled, and where he exhaled to. He was already applauding. She could have made him suffer. But after the previous lessons, Zither Monarch knew that she could not delay this time. His mind and the saint in his ears could turn the situation around at any time. So she casually exploded the remaining 3 divine weapons, and at the same time pointed at the 4th one. Her right hand suddenly exerted force. Then she felt her body being hit by something. In fact, before her body was hit, she felt her arm lighten. That was because her palm, like the weapons she had exploded before, turned into countless pieces of flesh and blood. Then she could not feel her arm either. It followed the footsteps of her finger, and turned into a flower of blood. After destroying her palm and arm, a spear stained with golden blood pierced through the Grand Elder's left chest and pinned him to the ground. According to common sense, even if Zither Monarch had suffered such a serious injury, she should still have enough energy to quickly recover and catch Li Yunxin. But at this moment, she was pinned by the white spear and could not move. Black gas quickly overflowed from the wound. But instead of dispersing, it was absorbed by the spear. She endured the great pain, and turned to look at Li Yunxin with difficulty. What are you doing? Li Yunxin finally regained his freedom. But the first thing he did was to set up dozens of restrictions. It took him a full breath's time. After protecting himself with layers of protection, he looked up at Zither Monarch, and cautiously walked around her from afar, looking at her current appearance. When he was finally sure that she was not pretending, he let out a long breath, and slowly walked to her side and squatted down. Wolfsback Raging Lion Spear. He answered Zither Monarch's question, and raised his hand to touch the spear's shaft. Still, he could not feel anything unusual. The spear shaft was still warm. However, such an item was able to render the Zither Monarch, who had refined the power of the netherworld, unable to move at all, completely at his mercy. Bai Yanjun once told him that he could rely on this spear to guard the netherworld and destroy any evil creatures that might come to the earth. At that time, he had some doubts about the power of this spear, but at this moment he believed it without a doubt. Wolfsback, Raging Lion, Spear. Zither Monarch spat out these words. The light in her eyes quickly faded, and her eyes began to slacken. But she still took a breath and said, I can't accept this. Li Yunxin did not know whether the voice belonged to her or Shinryu. He was silent for a moment and said in a low voice, You should have been prepared for this result. A warrior dying on the battlefield is a dignified ending. Since you have the determination to dominate the world, you should know that there is no third way. There is only victory or death. He paused and sighed. The only thing I want to apologize to you is about Emperor Li. He stood up and pulled out his spear. At that time, I only wanted to restrain you. Or rather, I wanted to divert the trouble. With that, he thrust the spear into Zither Monarch's head. He didn't see any demonic soul or dragon soul that had left his body. It seemed that the spear absorbed the netherworld's aura and souls together, not letting anything go. Li Yunxin held the spear and stood next to Zither Monarch's corpse for a while, and said in a low voice, I killed a Grand Elder. The great sage snorted in his ear. My staff strike scattered half of her internal energy. You deserve to die if she kills you again. Li Yunxin sighed. People who harm their teammates should not speak. Forget it. I just feel that she and the Kirin dragon did not need to die. Life makes fools of people. This feeling is called desolation. He did not know how the monkey demon reacted. After a while he said, I don't like you. You are treacherous and cunning. Now that you have killed someone, you are sighing hypocritically. Now that you are like this, why didn't you let me live just now? Li Yunxin snorted with a smile. At the same time, he scattered a talisman and incinerated Zither Monarch's corpse. Aren't you always yelling about killing people? Why do you want me to let you go now? Humph. I will naturally kill those who deserve to be killed. Don't think about those who were wrongly killed. What's the point of thinking about them? Just go to the underworld and get them back. But you have to. I am not as capable as you are. Li Yunxin shook his spear and swept away the golden blood on it, then put it into his sleeve. The reason I have lived until now is because of the schemes you look down on. People have to do many things against their will to live in this world. Otherwise, why do so many people want to be their ancestors? Because that way they can do what they want. The Kirin dragon is like that, Zither Monarch is like that, and so am I. Aren't you like that, great sage? The monkey demon fell silent. Li Yunxin waited for a while, but he did not say anything else. He sighed again, and with a flash he disappeared from this space. After returning to the secret room, where he had been imprisoned for almost a month, Li Yunxin casually tapped on the wall a few times. A frame appeared from the void of space. A voice and image appeared on the other side. Old Lu's face moved closer and asked with wide eyes, "Brother Xan, are you done?" Li Yunxin smiled and said, "I'm done. There's nothing I can't do." Old Lu heaved a sigh of relief and murmured, "Good, good, good, that's good." His face took up the entire screen. Because he had never seen such a thing before, he felt that the closer his face was, the closer he was to Li Yunxin. So Li Yunxin could only wave his hand and expand the frame in front of him so that he could see the entire palace. He had already seen the situation on the other side. Now that he saw it again, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. His current location was Dragon Island. There was a soft light in the room, as if it was daytime. On the other side, the Eastern Sea Lord's palace was in the same situation. The dark and spacious palace had only been illuminated by spells and lamps for 1,000 years. Only now did it return to its original appearance. Chapter 754. This meant that Penglai Island was also a creation of that world, and so were the other two islands. Taoist Qingshui stood a little further behind Lu Gongzan. She smiled when she saw Li Yunxin. "Dragon King, you should know that what I said is true. What did Linlong say before he died?" At this moment, Li Yunxin could take a good look at this Taoist Qingshui who had been in contact with him, but never showed up. Not long ago, Taoist Qingshui contacted him when he was trapped on Dragon Island and revealed a crucial little detail to him. There was no technical content. It was just the common sense and thinking that Li Yunxin once told Linlong. But it did help him a lot. It saved him a day or more thinking time. Because of this, he understood the mystery of opening the airlock. Therefore, no matter how he felt about this woman in the past, he had to show some calmness at this moment. So he smiled. "It's not a big deal. It's just a sigh. She pretended to be Shinryu for so long that even I was fooled." She seemed to be more relaxed when she revealed her true self at the last moment. "But there's one thing I don't understand. I hope the owner of Southernwood House can explain it to me." "Dragon King, please go ahead." "When she pretended to be Shinryu and came to see me for the first time, I saw her in my own painting. I deliberately said the word possession, but she didn't respond to it. She just turned a deaf ear to it." Li Yunxin observed Taoist Qingshui's expression. "But just now, she told me about the art saint's possession. She didn't hide anything. What's going on?" Taoist Qingshui thought for a while. When she was thinking, the way she frowned was very beautiful. But Li Yunxin's heart didn't waver at all. Because in addition to all the previous contact, there was still a gap between the two. At least in Li Yunxin's opinion. If what Li Chunfeng said was true, then Taoist Qingshui had a part in all the schemes that he had experienced since he was born. Many people would look back at the sufferings they had gone through after they had escaped from their sufferings, and their hearts would always become more tolerant. But no matter how tolerant she was, Li Yunxin still couldn't develop a good impression of her. The current peace they were showing was only due to the mutual benefit of each other. Taoist Clearwater thought for a moment and said, If you want to hear my answer, the answer is very simple. Shinryu did not know, but Kirin knew. Chen Zhao had drawn her to see how far he could go. It was understandable that she hadn't thought it through. However, Chen Hua had created Shinryu for his own use. Naturally, he wouldn't let her know. Since Kirin Dragon wanted to impersonate a Shinryu to survive, he had to be careful with every step he took, as if he was treading on thin ice. She wouldn't miss out on such an important matter. Li Yunxin nodded. I can accept this explanation. The razor principle. But there's something else that happened that night. That night, she caught a flood dragon from Dongting and threw it in front of me. If she was only an illusion when she appeared on the land, where did her power come from? After a moment of silence, Daoist Clearwater said, I did it. Then I understand. Li Yunxin nodded. Okay. I have no more questions. Daoist Clearwater was surprised. You're not going to ask me why I helped her do that? Li Yunxin smiled. We don't have to be so open with each other. You have your own plans. There must be many reasons to help her do something. I can think of 3 or 4. If that's the case, why should I ask you for an explanation that I don't know is true or false? Also, she kept calling you Chichuan B**TCH. Li Yunxin paused. It's obvious that you've interacted many times and are familiar with each other. Daoist Clearwater didn't mind. She only said, but now she's dead. But nothing will happen between us. Li Yunxin smiled. Don't forget about Li Chunfeng. Daoist Clearwater frowned. That was supposed to be. Li Yunxin put a finger on his lips. I've won today. I don't want to hear anything that spoils my mood. Let's talk about the next step. Lin Long and Qin Jun are just small fries. The 10,000-year-old ancestor gave her that kind of cultivation technique, probably to leave a weakness for her. Letting me into the Dragon Island is probably to let me restrain her. Now that she's dead, we should think about how to deal with the 10,000-year ancestor. Daoist Clearwater smiled. Fine. But when it comes to the 10,000-year ancestor, he's probably the strongest opponent you've ever met. If he really reached the Grand Supreme Realm, his strength would be at its peak. The only one who can restrain him is your helper, the Golden Rock King. But the Golden Rock King probably won't want to interfere. He doesn't like the ocean anyway. His adopted daughter, Bai Yunxin, has been with you for some time. He should know your personality. If I were him, I wouldn't be worried if I knew you were in the 10,000-year ancestor's territory, because I know that you'll be the one to bear the responsibility. Although the two of them spoke calmly, they were actually having a war of words. So Lu Gongzan retreated behind Daoist Clearwater. When he heard her talk about the Golden Rock King, his eyes moved. Although Li Yunxin was looking at Daoist Clearwater, he was also paying attention to old Lu. He never liked to show his true feelings. So even though he was very happy to see old Lu, he didn't show it. Lu Gongzan could find out a few things about him on land, but on the sea, he was surrounded by danger and had little information. So he was thinking about what Lu Gongzan had been doing these days, and how he had been doing. Luckily, old Lu and him were connected, so he could understand. Li Yunxin saw his expression and understood what he meant. He was saying that the actual situation might be different from what Daoist Clearwater said. It seemed that he was not idle on land. He got the hint from Lu Gongzan, so he interrupted Daoist Clearwater. But the thing that the 10,000-year ancestor wants to refine is also mixed with the power of the netherworld. Even if he has cultivated for tens of thousands of years and has a solid foundation, he can only use all his power in the netherworld. Lin Long told me that she wants to open the entrance to the netherworld and turn the human world into the netherworld. She also said that she wants to teach the Golden Rock King a lesson. The 10,000-year ancestor is smarter than her, so he should have thought of this. In my opinion, he would also want to do the same. At that time, the Golden Rock King won't be able to be the Demon King of the land. Once we're done, it'll be harder for him to deal with the 10,000-year ancestor. Li Yunxin shook his head. So I don't think that a ruthless person who could cooperate with Qin Zhao for so many years and endure until today is that stupid. Daoist Clearwater smiled and was about to speak, but Li Yunxin interrupted her. There's one more important thing. Now the entrance to the netherworld is in my hands. If you're the Golden Rock King, will you trust me? Will you worry that one day I'll suddenly go crazy and really open the entrance? Or will you refine it for fun like Lin Long? Taoist Clearwater frowned slightly. These possibilities. We still have to think about it. For now, we're on the same side. You're seriously injured, and you don't have many magic weapons left. I have some that you can use. The war is coming, so let's put aside the past for now. Your priority is to take care of your body. Li Yunxin smiled. Okay. Then bring your things in. Ask old Lu to bring them in. You can't stay there for long, Taoist Clearwater said. There are waves on the sea again, so it's not convenient for me to show up. But what you did before shocked the 9 seas, so you should do it. Li Yunxin stopped smiling. Impossible. Don't think about it. What? It's impossible for me to leave here. He looked at Taoist Clearwater. You can't trick me out of here. Now that I know that you know how to control this dragon island, do you think I'll be stupid enough to give it to you? I'm afraid that once I come out, you'll change your face. Taoist Clearwater was stunned for a while and smiled helplessly. Taoist Zai, who had been silent behind her, sighed. Dragon King, you're thinking too much this time. Dragon King, you should still remember that before you went to the Dragon Island, I told you some things underwater. Actually, I told you at that time that the Dragon Island was very dangerous. At that time, I was afraid that there were eyes and ears of the 10,000-year ancestor. So I couldn't say it clearly, but half of what I said at that time was what I wanted to say. The other half was what my master wanted me to remind you. My master has no ill intentions towards you. Li Yunxin looked at him. I thought you were a good person, so I gave you some advice at that time. But now, I have reservations about you. I don't have a good impression of the people from your association. Taoist Zai, we had a good relationship in the past. I advise you not to persuade me anymore. I don't want to lose the last bit of positive impression I have of you. Taoist Clearwater raised her hand and stopped Taoist Zai. Then, when will you believe that I have no ill intentions and come here to discuss important matters? Li Yunxin pointed at Lu Gongzan. The first step is to send him here. The second step is to wait for Golden Rock's people to come here. Taoist Clearwater looked at him in confusion. Golden Rock? Yes. Li Yunxin didn't even blink. Before coming to the sea, I had already met with Golden Rock. The condition was that I would be the vanguard. If I make some noise, he'll come after me. Taoist Clearwater thought about his words seriously. Your words seem. Li Yunxin smiled. Ha. When I left Yunshan, Bai Yunxin followed me. Aren't you curious why she left halfway? Because at that time, I had already made a deal with Golden Rock. And she was an important part of it. Golden Rock naturally wouldn't let her take the risk. You mean? Taoist Clearwater said softly. The engagement between Golden Rock and dragons. Li Yunxin waved his hand impatiently. I don't want to talk about those things. But just like what I said to Qin Jun, people have to do things that go against their conscience in this world. But Bai Yunxin saved my life before, so we are quite close. You know this, and so does Golden Rock. Chapter 755. After a while, Taoist Qing Shui heaved a sigh of relief. 2 of my questions can be answered now. Why did she protect you? She added a lot of variables to my plan before. Why did the evil king get close to you at the foot of Cloud Mountain? It was also beyond my expectation. So, Taoist Qing Shui pondered for a while and shook her head. I can agree. But I have a condition. Now Lu Gongzan can't go to your place. She looked at Li Yunxin seriously. It's not that I want to harm you, but I'm afraid that you will harm me. We all know that you have a grudge against me. I'm afraid that if Golden Rock really comes here, you will settle the score with me before you fight against Ancestor 10,000 years. At that time, I won't be a match for you. I'm telling you this because I sincerely want to work with you, so I need to protect myself first. Lu Gongzan will stay with me. As long as he doesn't leave Penglai, no one will restrict his freedom or endanger his safety. When Golden Rock comes here, I'll make a decision after I see him. Li Yunxin grunted. With his current cultivation and realm, you can't stop him if he wants to leave. I know this. Taoist Qing Shui glanced at Lu Gongzan. He got the body of Dragon Sun from hatred, and has great treasures. If a profound realm cultivator wants to leave, no one can stop him. But I also know that he is much more benevolent and kind than you. You have the help of the Grand Elder, but you don't want to leave the Dragon Island, because you found out that I also know something that you know. While saying, Taoist Qing Shui raised her hand and made a few strokes in the air. These strokes seemed to be more brilliant than Li Yunxin's. At least she didn't need to point at the wall. So, another image appeared in front of her. The image was made up of two parts. On the top there was a square. Below the square there was a saucer. But the saucer was broken. The surface was distorted, and many edges were missing. In the middle of the square, there was a small human figure. Lu Gongzan and Li Yunxin were both shocked. Everyone could tell that the figure belonged to Li Yunxin. Then that square was the Dragon Island that he was currently on. Below was where he fought with Zither Lord and Qilong. For example, although it's not convenient for me to enter the Dragon Island, I can also not let others enter. Taoist Qing Shui pointed in the air a few more times. The light outside the square shone faintly and disappeared in an instant. Now I've closed all the entrances to Dragon Island, she said softly. This is what Chen Zhao taught me. Others I didn't want to use. I've said it before. I sincerely want to cooperate with you. Then he glanced at Lu Gongzan. He's locked up here. You can't get in, let alone leave, right? Lu Gongzan's face darkened and he fell silent. Li Yunxin didn't seem to care about this matter. Okay, you don't have to worry then. He thought for a while and changed the topic, as if he wanted to lighten up the atmosphere. I have something else to ask you, but I don't know if you can tell me. As long as it's not important, it's not inconvenient. Then tell me about Chen Zhao. Li Yunxin waved his hand, and a sofa appeared behind him. He sat down and slowly patted his arms and legs like an old man. Anyway, we don't need to eat or drink. Tell me some stories and wait for the Rock King to come. He said he didn't need to eat or drink, but he waved his hand, and a cup of black liquid appeared. He poured it into his mouth and burped in satisfaction. Taoist Qing Shui smiled. Where should I start? Since, Qilong said you didn't lose your mind, because you had some luck. You also said you learned something from Chen Zhao. Then I guess there must be a complicated story between you two. He narrowed his eyes and looked Taoist Qing Shui up and down rudely. His gaze seemed to penetrate her clothes. Did you learn your looks from Chen Zhao? Taoist Qing Shui was beautiful, Qilong was beautiful, and so was Guqin. Li Yunxin had seen the two before and wasn't surprised. It was normal for daughters to look like their mothers, even if they weren't mother and daughter in the usual sense. But now that he saw Taoist Qing Shui, he realized that she looked very similar to the two. People's definition of beauty was limited to a certain range, but all natural beauties had their own merits. Internet celebrity face. Of course, the three women wouldn't order a set meal. There had to be a reason for their similarity. Considering the complicated feelings Qilong had for Art Saint, Li Yunxin felt that they might be imitating Chen Zhao's looks. That was interesting. But when Taoist Qing Shui heard this, she chuckled sincerely. You want to hear this? Then you're wrong. Now she finally showed some of the mannerisms of a girl. Her smile was many times more charming than usual. Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan didn't say anything, but the Purple Knight spiritual master couldn't help but be dazed. This matter has to start from more than 2,000 years ago. You know how I came to be. I was formed by the gathering of spiritual qi in the world. Coincidentally, I became what I am today. I'm not like this because of Chen Zhao. But it's also because of this that I got some opportunities. Do you know what Chen Zhao looked like in the past? This question piqued Li Yunxin's interest. He thought for a moment and said, I don't know. Art Saint is an ordinary person. I mean her looks. If I'm 90% handsome, Chen Zhao at that time was only 30% handsome. Li Yunxin was genuinely surprised. But it's said that Art Saint's looks are unparalleled. Everyone in Yunshan knows that. Taoist Qing Shui smiled. Doesn't the Dragon King know how far Art Dao can go? The art of disguise is unparalleled in the world. When the demon general of the Donghai Emperor was sent to your place, He also used art Dao to change his appearance. Even the boundless Dragon King was fooled. Not to mention that Chen Zhao is a founder of a sect, and used it at the Grand Supreme level. Li Yunqing frowned and didn't speak for a long time. Actually, it wasn't because she was disappointed by Chen Zhao's appearance. Taoist Qing Shui said that she was 90% beautiful. This wasn't pride but humility. Shi Linlong and Gu Qingjun couldn't be compared to the women in the secular world. There were also extremely beautiful women in the secular world. But that was mostly the result of careful makeup. Even if they didn't wear makeup and had natural looks, there would still be times when they were ugly. For example, a beauty in the secular world had beautiful hair. But if she didn't wash it for a few days, her hair would become oily. If she were to encounter something that would make her mentally and physically exhausted, her beautiful hair would dry up, and her hair would become irritable. It was also said that a beauty's skin was smooth, and her fingers were like green onions. But such beautiful skin would also have spots, dark marks, and the like. Similarly, if she didn't wash it for a long time, her skin would become rough, oily, or even smelly. Mortals would always have flaws. That was caused by biology. Even the most perfect mortal would have one or two regrets, even if they weren't eye-catching. But Taoist Qing Shui and other demon-like beauties were perfect. All the most exaggerated praises in the world became true when it came to them. Even Li Yunqing's skin was smooth after obtaining the demon-like body. Not a single pore could be seen, let alone them. This kind of existence could only exist in the most magnificent illusions of mortals. Therefore, using her appearance as a benchmark, it could be said that Chen Ying's appearance as a mortal was somewhat beautiful. Among mortals, even if she didn't have a breathtaking appearance, she would still be considered a pretty beauty. What surprised Li Yunqing was that Chen Ying would do something like hiding her true appearance. He thought he already understood Chen Ying, but Lin Long's words made him see another side of her. Just as he was about to come to a conclusion, Taoist Qing Shui's words revealed another side of her. But it made her look even more vivid. It turned out that she also had some thoughts of a girl. Taoist Qing Shui seemed to understand his thoughts. She smiled slightly and continued. Before Shinryu appeared in the world, she still needed beings like us to gather spiritual power for her incarnation. You know this. Chen Ying once traveled the world for a period of time, saying that she wanted to cultivate her mind and pursue the Tao. It was during that time that she set up a big array. My training hall at that time was near the capital of the Qing Kingdom.